Good morning. Good to hear that. So, did you have a great time yesterday? Yes. Okay, so we're gonna promise another great day today. So I'm very happy to moderate the first session today. And here, main question is how we can translate, this interest in North Korea and K-pop into Korean studies. I've been working on Korea for more than 3 decades. And then when I began my career, it's all about Korean economy. Okay, how to explain the rise of Korea as an economic power, right? And then some of us were working on Korean democratization because Korea achieved democracy as well. So looking back, economic development, political democracy. Okay, now it's time for what? K-pop, right? So culture, economy, politics to culture. And you saw documentaries on K-pop, and also we are making one on those Korean human rights, so we can maybe use those in our classroom. And when we are organizing this conference, we are debating, where to focus, right? And then, just celebration. So I didn't want to have, too serious academic conference. So more fun, more conversation, more celebration. Okay, now then, I think there are, some issue because, for me personally, I didn't know much about K-pop. I have to confess that. But because there's so much interest, for the first time in my class in Korea, I spent 2 lectures on K-pop last year. It's a big breakthrough for me, right? And also, hi Dafna.
Looming over us.
But I think also one big question for the K-pop industry is how can they sustain, okay? So that can they work with our experts or academics to sustain K-pop for many, many years to come. And regarding North Korea, I think there are 2 issues. One is when you think about North Korea, either nuclear power or human rights issue. And regarding North Korean issue, I'm sure Professor Kang will be discussing, but there's a certain gap between policy community and academics. Because sometimes I feel like policy makers, maybe I'll be a little careful because we are broadcasting, sometimes they don't really understand North Korea per se. On the other hand, many of North Korean scholars, they don't have much interest in policy issue, so how to bridge. And regarding North Korean human rights, very strong activism. I mean, a lot of campuses are holding North Korean human rights night, right? But then we should go beyond demonizing North Korean regime or people, better to understand what's happening in North Korea. Okay, that's why we wanted to really have a conversation about how we can translate this interest in K-pop and North Korea into Korea program. So before we start, I have a couple of questions. How many of you are students here? Okay, great. And how many of you were first introduced to Korea through K-pop? Okay, good to see you. Okay, hopefully you can continue your interest in Korean studies. All right, so I have excellent lineup for this panel. Really 3 leading experts on those issues. So my left, my dear friend and colleague, David Kang. He is now running very wonderful Korea program at USC. And then he run like a Rising Star, workshop. Yeah. And also he's running a grant Asia strategy.
Yeah, US
Yeah,
Asia.
US Asia, yeah. So he's really trying to bridge policy community with academic community. And then he was a visiting professor at our center almost for 2 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. So yeah, thanks for joining us today. And then Professor Yumi Moon, my dear colleague also. So actually she was the second Korean studies faculty after me. And then she's in the history department and she's teaching course on K-pop,
No, I don't.
on North Korea. So she will be addressing also about North Korea. And then we have also two colleagues who will be speaking on K-pop. One is Michelle Jo, who came all the way from Toronto. It's a long flight, and thanks for coming. And it's still fairly early on your time, right?
It's later.
Yeah, later. Oh, I'm sorry, later. I got confused. Yeah. Okay, so she is a really leading expert on K-pop. So not only doing research on K-pop, but also she's writing widely on popular places to talk about K-pop. So welcome to Stanford. But last but not the least, Dafna joining. I'm glad to see you smiling. So. Dafna also my colleague at Stanford, and she's been teaching on K-pop. And then I think she was our third faculty to our Korea program in our history. So Dafna will be joining virtually from Hawaii or no? But good to see you, Dafna. Okay, so without any further ado, so David, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Congratulations on 20 years. I have a special spot in my heart for Stanford because I was an undergrad here a long time ago. And it never occurred to me that we could have a Korean Studies program here. There was nobody doing Korean Studies, and to see it grow is amazing. So, and I do have a special spot. I spent 2 years here when I was a mid-career professor. I run the Korean Studies Institute at University of Southern California, USC. And I went there to make it the best place in the world for Korean studies. There should be friendly competition among what we're doing. We call ourselves the Korean Studies Institute, and we have careful not to become the North Korean Studies Institute, because we could do something every week on North Korea.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Activist, nukes, human rights. We're also in Hollywood. And we're careful not to become the Korean Celebrity Institute. Because we could say, Daniel Day Kim, come here. Right. We could do all that stuff every week. So Professor Shin and I have had these conversations. What are we as a research institute at a major university? What's our role? We're not the James Corden, Late Show, right? There's plenty of people who can get celebrities and talk to them. We're also not activists, as we said. We're not ones out there trying to affect or, there's plenty of groups. I work with Link a lot. You guys probably know that, Liberty in North Korea. What we've come to is our little catchphrase, our mission is explaining Korea to the world. There's a lot of institutes or groups or TV shows that can do that other stuff. None of them are going to write the books that everybody reads to understand what's going on. That's what we can do. That is our advantage. That's what scholars are. I joke, this is sort of a joke, but what scholars are is like, we like to count things, right? Social science, we like to count things. How many are there? How big is it? What color is it, right? That's our strength. Only when you have that. What are human rights? I've watched this change over my lifetime. I teach Intro to IR, and every year when I teach this Introduction to International Relations, I do a thing on human rights, right? And I'll just have a blackboard and I'll say, what are human rights? And I make you guys say, right? We tended to say 20 years ago, human rights are freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. And I put them in one column. We've then gone to a living wage, healthcare, and I put those in a different column. Now we go to things like gay and lesbian rights, these kinds of things. And I say, what are those? We have political rights. In America, we think of political rights. But there's economic human rights, and then there's social human rights. In America, we tend to define it purely as this. And you know the problem with economics? You're on your own. This is America. Right? We don't think that that's important. But that's a decision that we make as a group, as a culture, as a country. But only when you define those things can you then say, how do we get them? And one of my favorite people in North Korean studies, who's taught me more than anyone else about North Korea, is this Professor Sandra Fahey, who wrote a wonderful book about North Korean defectors. Deeply empathetic. I say she's got the most empathetic view of North Koreans I've ever heard. And she's the one who said to me, humanitarian issues and human rights, they are not, there's no, access to food is a human right. So how do we affect, it's one thing to be, as we said, angry at North Korea and stuff like that. Scholars are the ones who help us think about it. How do we know what human rights are? How do we affect them? Only then can you actually do something about it. Because we just go out running, you could all get mad and go running out and do nothing. How do we affect them? How do we change North Korea? What is North Korea? And then I'm going to stop. Choi Sang-hun, the New York Times correspondent you saw yesterday, he compared authoritarian North Korea to K-pop training. Do you hear that? I sort of winced a little bit, but he asks a fundamental question. Now, he's a journalist. He's not us. What is Korea? What's similar and what's different? That's the kind of questions that we can ask and we can answer. And then we can say, because I say about North Korea, and then I will stop, I say about North Korea, the best way to understand North Korea is they are Koreans first and foremost. It's not a communist country, it is a Korean country, right? It's not a authoritarian, personalist, blah, blah, whatever. It's Korean. If we understand what that is, we can understand why it exists and why it survives, why it hasn't collapsed the way many of us thought about it. So when I think about translating these things, that's our strength. Mm-hmm. And then we give that to other people who can then be activists or we're not a policy think tank in DC, we're not activists, we're not the James Corden show. As much as I would like to have Suho every week, right? But that's how we've thought about it, and I will stop there.
Okay, thanks, David. Great start. So let me turn to Yumi. Yeah. So David's an IR and Yumi historian. Yeah.
Hi everyone. I'm quite intimidated by these K-pop fans and students who are interested in Korea. In fact, David, I'm very grateful that you just set the tone. I'm in it's ivory tower. I think I've been thinking about in academic terms without really trying to connecting my academic interest with the broader interest on Korea. But however, really, K-pop and I'm a K-pop fan. I love Suho and BTS. So I myself enjoy K-pop and K-culture. But at the same time, this interest in K-pop and the question of North Korea really influenced my academic life as well. So for today, I'm trying to say, I have some kind of notes, but I don't know if I can deliver my points very well. But I'd like to have this opportunity to just ask your understanding of myself as a scholar and as a Koreanist in a US university. And then somehow we'll find some kind of connections of interest and related to Korea. So I will just briefly introduce my thought on 3 points. The first one is on a more general status of Korean studies, global Korean studies, where we are. And the second one is I'm not a North Korean expert, but as I study Korea's history, modern Korea history, I kind of accidentally had a chance to know northern region. North Korea did not start from 1945. North Korea, Korea was not a divided country before 1945. Korea was one. So that's why there was a lot of interactions between northern region and southern region, and northern region and Manchuria and Russia And all the way through Eurasian continent, you have the channels of travels and kind of connections. So northern regions are really important. So I had a chance to know somehow the ecology and culture, personality. Northerners are hot-tempered, I think, and they love military, and they're very brave. So these kind of things, I had a chance to know northern region better. And also, let's say I study the U.S. occupation period of Korea, and then I see a lot of military records of what's going on in North Korea, which was not under the U.S. occupation. It was under the Soviet occupation. And U.S. military left a lot of records on what's going on in northern region. And beyond, I mean, at the time, you have China has a civil war, so Kuomintang, Chinese nationalists, and also Chinese communists were having war there. And they really had a connection with Northerners and North Korea. North Korea, and the DPRK was under the formation at the time. You have very serious interactions between this Northern Korea and China or Northeast Asia in general. So these kind of, tend to read these materials, and I realized that these materials should be more integrated into the studies of Korea, understanding Korean history, or understanding broader Asian history further. So that's the thing in the point that I want to make first. And the third one is I teach North Korea at Stanford, and then I would like to share some thoughts why I was teaching North Korea at Stanford. The first point is that it's more from my own interest. I studied Korean studies at PhD studies in Korean history and East Asian languages at Harvard in 1999. And the condition, how many minutes? The condition at this time, I was really fascinated. I grew up in South Korea and came to the United States after I was 30 years old. So I was first exposed to the East Asian studies in North America. I was fascinated by the quality of scholarship on East Asia in general in the United States, especially at Harvard. But at the same time, I was also exposed to the marginality of Korean studies in the West in comparison to studies of China and Japan. And I've been, during my entire career, and resources and number of faculty members are much larger in Chinese studies or Japanese studies. I've been struggling with this kind of condition throughout my entire career. But K-pop and North Korea, they really changed the scene. And then now our Korean language courses are filled with a lot of students, and our courses have a lot of students. And in Europe, some more numerous students are major in Korean studies than in China studies. This is the fact. And then in top important universities in North America are hiring faculty members and expanding courses in their campuses. Then my current question is how we consolidate and then reinforce this trend. My question is that what matters in higher education is the teachers are important, scholars are important, the quality of the faculty members, the scholarship of faculty members, and the quality of their teaching are most important in consolidating this trend and somehow expanding Korean studies influence to the other academic fields. Stanford has been, should I stop here? Do I have to have
just
more time?
maybe a couple of more minutes.
Yes. So Stanford has been great in teaching our PhD students, and our PhD students in history, in sociology, in anthropology, and in performance studies and theater have landed tenure track positions in those important top US universities. And then somehow also there are a lot of newly appointed scholars in those new universities in North America. I think somehow the Korean studies, David is organizing Rising Star workshop. I was benefited by that workshop. It means important scholars are reading your chapters of dissertation and help you produce books. So I think the Stanford has a very special, unique role in reinforcing this production of scholars in Korean studies. And I would like that we kind of invest more resources in training our graduate students and helping new tenured faculty, junior faculty members, and also, what do I say, or more.
Okay.
That's the point that I would like to make.
Okay.
Just one note on North Korean studies. I teach North Korean history, North Korea in historical perspective, and during the pandemic, I and Dafna Professor Jo are team teaching these courses. Students are excited about North Korea, produced wonderful subjects, and we realized that students are really smart. And I think you guys are all smart, but students
taking those class, yeah.
in my classes are so kind of amazingly brilliant. And then they came up with this interest in North Korea could be related to more broader subjects such as in history, media studies, and so forth and so on. But what the problem that I encounter is that it's very difficult to just consolidate sources and provide sources and guidance to students for their own research. So, but there are sources or records on North Korea are not many, but at the same time, if you want to go further, there are a lot of multilingual and multilingual and multinational sources to study North Korea. So what I would like to, perhaps one suggestion is that we can collect create a certain database on kind of records on North Korea websites and link, and then connect this database to APARC or Center for East Asian Studies and make them available to students, as well as some of the other specialists of North Korea. So that's the suggestion that I can say. And I'll stop here. I think I'm rambling.
Okay, so we will come back to some of those issues that you raised. Okay, now let's turn to K-pop from North Korea. And as you saw, we are trying to connect between North Korea and K-pop. And even Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, it's the first time for me to hear him talk about K-pop. So I think it's coming along quite nicely. So let's hear from Michelle and then Dafna. Michelle? Yeah.
Great. So first of all, I just want to say I feel really privileged to be here and honored to be speaking with such illustrious folks here. To give you a little bit of background, I am a Korean American. I've benefited so much from Korean studies in my education. I think I have a career because of the supports of institutions like the Korea Foundation, which is represented here. I started off as a cinema scholar, someone who is really interested in East Asian film, sort of more broadly. And as I, started being a scholar after I finished my PhD, I realized that it was impossible to understand Korean film without understanding more about culture industries more broadly, and also history, society, and politics. So this is something that is really important, I think, and what Korean studies brings is a very holistic emphasis. So you can't study the objects without understanding more of the context and rigorously historicizing what you're looking at. So that's something that I think I can do, whereas some of the colleagues that I work with in other more disciplinary frame departments, so like in film and media, for instance, they struggle to access some of that information, which then gives them, more difficulty, I think, in being able to fully flesh out what an object is and is doing. So I brought some slides just because I was worried I would ramble, and so this will just kind of jog my brain as I'm going. So I was thinking very hard about this idea of bringing together these two topics that this conference has done so well. And I think that there are so many overlaps, so many points of connection, even if on the surface, if you were to tell someone, oh, I'm going to speak at an event that brings together K-pop and North Korea, they might think like, huh? So hopefully I'll be able to elaborate this a little bit more. But we've talked about some of these topics so far at this event, right? When we're talking about both Hallyu and what maybe aspects of North Korean culture and just what we know, I really want to emphasize this point about questions of mass culture, collective culture. Popular culture is sometimes connected to ideas about populism, which has, there are different inflections of those terms, right? But I really want to think about collectives and how they are kind of brought to life by collective feeling. And that's something that I'm following through in my research. So we can talk about like virtual public spaces, and I think that this is an area that is of great interest to people who are looking at platforms, who are studying the way that platforms exist as these, virtual public spaces where people come together and they do things together, like watch media together. And so I just have some images of, I think, the way that Korean television has entered into a kind of public media space through the way that it operates on platforms. So, I just took a screenshot of Netflix and the way that when I am looking to watch Crash Landing on You, I'm seeing it amidst a lot of other TV shows that are not necessarily circumscribed by ethnicity or nationality, but are presenting a kind of global menu of things to watch, and how this is going to inflect my understanding of what is being depicted in the show, right? There are other things that are happening on these transnational platforms. So I just took a quick screenshot of a video that I find really helpful for teaching when talking about, how accurate is Crash Landing on You. Of course, it's a fantasy, right? A lot of televisual spaces are fantasies, but there are North Korean defectors who are on YouTube who are kind of fashioning themselves as influencers and who are talking about culture in particular ways. So you can access that through this virtual public space that I'm proposing here as like a platform space. The comparison that Professor Kang mentioned earlier that the New York Times journalism brought up is another point, I think, of connection that I wanted to bring in here. But look, this image of a K-pop concert and this image of the mass games, right? We're talking about mass assembly and the formation of a kind of collective or unified action on the part of groups, right? So how can we understand what's happening? I'm not proposing that they're the same thing at all. They're very, very different. But in some ways, they have similar forms, right? So how can we understand that? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about fandom collectives, how they've come up in recent US media stories, journalism. This is part of a project that I've been working on just to trace the discourse of K-pop's politicization. It's clear that some journalists mean activism and some journalists mean philanthropy. And those things get conflated. So it's important for us as scholars to really try to figure out what is being said. So I just have some kind of provocative headlines, right? But this is helping us to understand the way that K-pop is making an impact in the public sphere, especially through journalistic media. So how is this discourse impacting the way that people think about what K-pop is, how it provides a framework for collectivity or people coming together around a common interest, how fans translate their activity into their kind of civic identities. These are just some headlines. I don't agree with all of the headlines if you dig a little bit deeper, but they are interesting to take note of because this is the way that K-pop is being characterized in North America. I wanted to end with, this is like a really interesting Reuters story that produced, that did a long feature on, again, Army as a social justice organization. Okay, so I want to end with some statistics from Twitter. So I'm really interested in Twitter in particular as a platform because there's some consensus that when people look at Twitter, they know sort of that they're seeing a very limited snapshot, but at the same time, there is a belief, especially on the part of journalists and other kind of people who have a public mouthpiece, that they are seeing, what's happening on the ground. There's a certain truth value to what Twitter tracks as important. So these two graphics are from the Twitter blog, and they were reporting on how important K-pop discourse is, or K-pop Twitter is, to the world's conversations as they are mapped by this platform. So from July 2020 to June 2021, there were 7.5 billion tweets that had something to do with K-pop. So this was a record that was set. And then in the graph below, that's just tracking the increase in numbers of K-pop related tweets over a 10-year period. And you see that at the right side, you hit that 7.5 billion figure. So this gives us a sense of the scale of K-pop fandom, what we need to kind of look at and think about. And yeah, this just opens up for so much more research going forward. But do we see this as a massification of fandom publics or groups? There's an argument to be made, I think, that this kind of public visibility of K-pop as a point of unifying lots and lots of people, how is that different from the spectacle of the mass assembly? I think this is a question that I want to pursue in further work. But anyways, just wanted to say a few things, and thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
So great. Michelle raised a lot of important topics. So if you're looking for a topic for your thesis, just grab one of them, okay? But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Now we are going to turn to Dafna Azar. Dafna, you're here? Okay, great.
Sorry. Thank you. I can't believe how big my head looks on screen. I'm so sorry. This is terrible. What a disaster. Okay.
No,
can you see
look
my
great,
slides?
Dafna, you look great.
I'm wearing a coat because it's cold outside. Okay. You can see my slides, yeah?
Yes.
So thank you for making it possible for me to participate virtually. This incredible two-day event is the result of so much hard work for many, many months by the Korea program staff, Heather and Haley and Kelsey and so many others. And if there was ever a bad time to get COVID, it was 6 days ago. I'm so sad not to be there with all of you. Professor Shin, I wanted to thank you for your startup vision for a Korea program 20 years ago, for creating one faculty position and then another and then another, and an entire infrastructure that supports research, visiting positions, collaborative projects with students, and the list goes on and on. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Professor Shin, for your vision and your leadership and your trust in me.
Yes.
And I can't wait to see what is coming in the next 20 years under your leadership. When I was 12, there was a martial arts cultural boom. One of the films that I was obsessed with was the original Karate Kid film from 1984. It tells the story of a scrappy new kid on the block who learns to fight his inner and outer demons through physical and spiritual discipline. When I was 20, I decided that I was going to fight my inner and outer demons in Seoul, South Korea. I had two goals: to get a black belt in Taekwondo and to become fluent in Korean.
So you got both.
So here I am.
Yeah, whoa.
Here I am with my dojang teammates at the Taekwondo Hammadang. I reached the rank of third degree black belt. I learned to speak Korean. And I was about to start an MA, a master's degree in Korean literature at the University of British Columbia. And that led to a PhD, and that led me to Stanford, where today I teach and do research on Korean literature and culture. Now, I'm telling you all of this because we are in a moment of tremendous opportunity. Just as the martial arts films of the 1980s drew people like me to Taekwondo and to learning Korean, today young people from all over the world, and we've seen them throughout this conference, are drawn to Korean media, Korean food, Korean cosmetics, and the Korean language. And these young people are looking for ways to deepen their interests. And I want to share with you what this dramatic growth looks like from the perspective of Korean language education. This report, titled Enrollments in Languages Other Than English in U.S. Institutions of Higher Education, is published online every 3 years by the MLA, the Modern Language Association. This is from 2016. The next report is going to come out in 2023. It skipped during the pandemic. And it provides the data to what we know anecdotally to be true, that while many foreign language programs are suffering from plummeting enrollments, Korean is only growing. This is in spite of the fact that the US Department of State places Korean in the category 4 super hard languages, which means that to get to the same level of fluency, it takes 2,200 hours of Korean study compared with, let's say, 600 to 750 hours if you're learning French or Norwegian or Dutch. This, however, does not seem to be stopping our students who want to learn Korean at the college level. Anecdotally, I'll say that we're seeing the same kind of enrollment trends in our classrooms. Yesterday, my wonderful students, Megan and Vivian, shared their stories about how Korean popular culture drew them into Korean studies. They're both, by the way, writing brilliant honors theses on class consciousness and agency in fiction and on comparative global fandom. The point is that their story is now typical. Non-heritage students start with an interest in K-pop, but then look for content classes that will give them more literature, more history, politics, gender, and culture. So in a way, the answer to the prompt of this panel, how do we translate interest in Korea, in Korean studies, is straightforward. We just have to keep doing our job. Provide students with tools to articulate their knowledge and experience, help them better frame their questions, and help them find their critical voices and arrive at insights that are both deeply personal, meaningful, and broadly constructive and generative. I want to introduce another program about which I care very deeply, and that is the Korean Language Village. This program was founded in 1999 by my PhD advisor, Ross King. It takes place in northern Minnesota. It's one of 14 other language villages, foreign language villages. And it was initially established by in the 1960s by progressive language pedagogues who realized that the combination of outdoor learning, summer camp fun, and language immersion were perfect combination. This program in particular, the Korean Language Village, filled the need for a language program that wasn't affiliated with a religious organization and wasn't designed in the Hangul Hakgyo Uri Minjok Uri-mal Korean language for Korean nationals model. So in 1999, our largest number of villagers came from the Midwest, from white families that had adopted Korean children and were looking for opportunities for their children to learn Korean. Here's a snapshot of our enrollments over the years. We have grown from 1999 to 2022, from 80 to 100 to 120. And that actually, if you look at the years, maps on quite nicely with, well, the dip is the recession, the 2008 recession. But then the rise really maps out nicely also to Hallyu. This may not look like huge numbers to you, But what you don't see is that we actually only have 120 beds in our program, and we have long waiting lists. And the reason we have long waiting lists is because we're confined to one specific site. We've always had to rent campsites for our program. We've been using the Russian language village for the last over 10 years to run our program. But all of that is about to change. Here is a picture of the first 2 buildings that have come up thanks to the generous support of Kenny Park of Simone Corporation. He is our most dedicated supporter, philanthropist. For context, from when we established this program until today, the Korean government has not supported us. They spent $10 million building an English language village, which then went bankrupt. But we have not been able to garner support from the people I think that should most care about Korean language education for young people in the United States in the K through 12 space. So I just want to spend the last few minutes talking about why I care about this program, why I think this is the kind of thing we need to be talking about when we talk about maximizing this moment, how to turn interest into Korea into long-term investment that will pay dividends in our lifetime and in our children's lifetime. Korean studies needs not only students that are interested in Korea, that's great, but we need students that have strong language skills to carry out advanced level of research and also to arrive at that deeper, understanding of Korea, of the Korean Peninsula as a place. Remember the slide that I showed you about how long it takes to get fluent in Korean? If we wait until our students are in college, it's too late. Many college students are thinking about their professional careers, about student debt, about how they're going to come out of college with a marketable degree. Many don't have the time or the resources to spend 2,200 hours getting to a decent level of fluency. We have to find that talent, those gifted, motivated learners, early. And the amazing thing is that all those learners are finding us here at the Korean Village. This is the K through 12 group. They come from all over the country. They come from overseas. They come from red states and blue states. They're white and they're people of color. They're beginners and they're advanced. They're heritage and they're not heritage students. They come to learn Korean in a safe, embracing, immersive environment. And I hire about 25 staff every year to support their language learning. We sing, we dance, K-pop, but also other kinds of dance. We eat Korean food, we learn about Korean history and politics. We're learning Korean through our stomachs, through our voices, and through our gestures. This is a space of compassion that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon spoke of so movingly about yesterday. This is that home space, that safe space that Angela talked about, also missing in her childhood. So when I'm asked, why does a professor from Stanford go every summer for 18 years to get bitten by mosquitoes in Minnesota? My answer is, first of all, this is my way of giving back, paying forward the people and the opportunities that put me where I am today. There is no greater gift that you can give to young, hungry learners than the gift of language, of authentic connection, and of community. And I want to continue giving this gift to any young person who wants that experience. So I implore you and all the people that we have in the room today and your communities and your networks to invest in the next generation of scholars, of bridge builders, and lifelong learners, and goodwill ambassadors and global citizens. By the way, the graduates of my program, of this program, are in all of our advanced content classes and language classes. And they're also, we've got one that's now in a PhD program at UCLA. So this is the next generation that we should be investing in. And I'll stop now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a lot of issues on the table. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions, and then I'll open to the floor for Q&A. I think this applies to both North Korea and K-pop. I think there are two issues in my view. One is, as you talked about, we are not policymaker or activists. Okay, so we are supposed to do research for our own work. I think when it comes to North Korea or I think even K-pop, there's not much data available. I mean, for North Korea, it's very hard, access to actual data in North Korea. So we are joking that, beauty of being North Korean experts is you can say whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And, we are all wrong, right? All right. It's almost like a guessing game because there's no real data to rely on. I think in a sense, it may apply to K-pop because certainly you can analyze maybe fan reactions and other phenomena, but you can't really talk to K-pop stars or even industry leaders, right? So you are really limited. You have to really analyze based on what you see as kind of more reflection or reaction, right? So I think that's one challenge. The other one, as a scholar, we're supposed to be, I guess, neutral or objective, and how you can detach from emotion. Because, when you look at North Korean human rights suffering, it hurts, right? I mean, it's so tough to see young kids strolling from, starvation and others, right? And then on the other hand, if you are a fan of K-pop, you don't want to say anything against K-pop, right? You all wanted to praise, how great K-pop is. So I think whether good or bad, how we can detach, ourselves as a researcher from emotion, right? So I think it applies to both topics. So who would like to start? You can address one or the other or both. Yeah, you share. Yeah.
So I would like to, I think, make make a claim for the ability to study something rigorously and still care about it. Because what I see when I talk to fans is that fans are incredibly sophisticated in the way that they are analyzing what they love. And I think this idea of neutrality or detachment, it's being questioned, I think, in a lot of areas, especially in pop cultural studies, fan studies in particular.
Asian American studies.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I wanted to mention as well is that when people study K-pop, they know that the word encompasses very many different practices, media objects, domains, communities, and so generally speaking, the definition of K-pop that's operative in media studies is a transmedia phenomenon. So it happens across many platforms, in many forms. And then when you're talking about K-pop as a kind of social phenomenon, it's not just the stars or the music videos.
Good point.
Or the albums or the IP, right? The things, the commodities that are being exported. It's the fandom and how that creates new ways of coming together or new identities beyond national, ethnic, other forms of identity. So yeah, I think that's some of the directions I would move.
Dafna, you wanna join?
Yeah. No, I just want to what Michelle just said really resonates with me. I think that I think back to an experience I had in class in the winter. I had a fantastic class, a group of students in my literature class, and the two pieces that shook the world of my students. One was Cho Se-hee's Nanjengyi, right, the dwarf, who launched the ball, and then the second was Human Acts, 소년이온다. And the reason that these works spoke so profoundly to the students is because it connected with them on a deeply emotional level. And I think that's okay. And I think that is something that, that's really what we need to explore. And so I absolutely agree with Michelle that, as scholars, we're also human beings and we have our deeply, held beliefs, but also, we are moved, and being able to embrace that and to acknowledge that in our students, but also to, as a part of the work that we do in the classroom, to give them the tools to say, okay, what is this making me feel? Why am I feeling this way? How do I translate? How do I understand that? And how do I mobilize these feelings and these thoughts in order to go back to my place, either to understand myself better or to understand my community better? And so I think that's something that, as long as we're aware of our own motivations, and we acknowledge those feelings in our students, I think it can only be productive.
What about North Korea?
May I?
Yeah,
Just,
maybe both of you.
Because I study North Korea's history, North Korea is a current situation. North Korea is really controlling sources. They're even revising their own histories. And in the photos of 1946, you have a certain elements. But if you see now in their textbooks or in their other materials, they're erased. So we had a chance to compare these two photos, and there's kind of constant attempt to revise their history. So it's very difficult to study North Korea. But at the same time, North Korea is not entirely isolated country. We are not aware of it. So, but they have a lot of connections to Eastern European countries, Latin America, Africa, and they have those records. And also, so if you combine North Korea's internal sources with these outside sources, you could create a very different picture of North Korea. And also, it's important to study history because in 1960s and 70s, North Korea had a relationship with China, and they have a certain patterns. And these patterns influence North Korea's actions now, not homogeneous or not entirely copying it, but really it could give us a background to understand North Korea's behavior now. But I think we have not many scholarly deep works on just those kind of aspects. I think if you want to study North Korea in a serious way, you should be multilingual. So studying North Korea is much more difficult. But at the same time, you could be a very great scholar because you should talk about Soviet Union, you could talk about China. So you could speak to the broader fields. So studying North Korea is challenging because you need to learn Korean language, which is most important for category, which is very difficult to study. But at the same time, you need to learn another language. But in the process, and also you need to understand North Korea from a comparative perspective, which is different socialist countries like China. But in the end, you could be a great scholar, big scholar, if you just try to just cope with that challenge.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, I want to say, Dafna, we miss you. What I love about Korean studies is that it's inherently interdisciplinary. You have to be interdisciplinary to study Korea. That's what it is, right? And we have humanists here who are talking about the meaning and how we understand our emotions and our feelings. That's what humanities does. They help us understand the meaning of the world, right? And when I said I'm a social scientist and I like to count things, that's a different academic discipline. And so I'm going to take a different approach, because we always do, and we always say, you know, everyone can be a North Korea expert because you don't need to know anything. And that drives me bananas because you don't. And the number of people who claim that they, to be North Korea experts and never study anything about it is, you go to DC, there's a reason we call it the blob. You're listening, right? But the fact is, and I'm going to argue something differently, there's tons of information about North Korea out there. We're not looking for it, right? Let me give you one example, which this has bothered me for 20 years, and I've finally decided to start doing it. Every single time the mainstream media quotes a North Korea quote, Kim Yo-jong, the sister, just said, "We will never attack South Korea first." What did they quote? "But if you do, we will wipe you out." We always miss the first half of what North Korea says. They always say, "We will not attack first, but you better not attack us." And we always ignore that, and then we say, "How dare they? You better not attack us, but we'll wipe you out if you attack us first." Oh yeah? Oh yeah, right, tough guy. I mean, it's just astonishing to me how badly we interpret what's in our face about North Korea. We're not looking at it, right? My friend Victor Cha runs the CSIS in Center for International, whatever it's called, Security something in DC, CSIS.
That's not important, right?
It's not important. He's not important. I'm here. No,
He may,
right?
he may be watching now.
He's watching, right? Yeah. Hi, Victor. But they've tried to add up stuff about North Korea, North Korean provocations. The thing that I'm going to start doing is we need to have one hand clap, and we need both sides. There's stuff there. We're not looking for it. That's when I say, what is our role as a scholar? Is to be able to say, this is what North Korea is. Now let's figure out what's going on with it, right? So there's way more opportunity than I think we have. There are so few people who take North Korea seriously as, how do we count it? What is it, right? So for anyone who cares, do that.
Great.
I know, it's a little too
before
long.
turning to audience, let me say one argument, okay, then get your reaction. Here we like to kind of disagree gracefully and have some conversation. So when I was putting together North Korea and K-pop, how to connect. Okay, and one argument that I've been making along with some of my colleagues here, okay, K-pop stars. Now they are gaining global prominence, and they should feel more responsible for global issue. And especially they should speak out against North Korean, violation of North Korean human rights issue. Okay, so if they don't speak out, who's going to do, right? So why don't you, speak out about violation of human rights in North Korea? And I know this is a quite controversial argument because some people are saying it's better to be apolitical. You don't want to get into this vicious argument. So that's I get that's a proposition or argument. Okay, K-pop star should speak out about violation of human rights in North Korea. So what's your reaction? I want some different views. Dafna, you can go
Dafna.
first.
Dafna.
No, I mean, we like to have really candid conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a university. We have academic freedom.
Yes.
We're not taken by any political ideology or bias.
I'm happy to go first because
Sure,
I've
yeah,
dealt with
yeah,
this stuff a
yeah.
lot, right? The thing about the movie yesterday, and I say this with all due respect to the filmmakers, if it's just hitting us emotionally, I've seen those movies over and over again. I don't need more of that. It's horrific what's happening. It's heartbreaking. But that's not what we do, and whether it's a K-pop star or not, if you just point that out, you're not adding very much. In America, we have performative North Korean human rights. We care about it, we don't really care. We don't, not as a country. We care so that we can insult North Korea, but we're not really doing anything about it. So the question to me is, what should we do to improve the lives of North Korean citizens? They're the most direct victims of the regime. If speaking out can do something to do that, then that's great, right? If we pass these things in the the U.S. Congress, we sanction them again and again. It's not getting any better, and so that's what I say. How do we improve it? And if we can do that, then let's speak out.
Okay, good.
Amen.
So who would like to? Anyone else?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Okay.
So I have looked at, ways that this claim of K-pop fandom and its politicization, how that plays out. I wish I had put in the slides. I have an image of a tweet that says K-pop for Biden, and it came out in 2020, kind of close to the election. And K-pop fans were like, no, this is not representing us. So there's a lot of concern about, the co-option of K-pop culture, fan culture, the idea that it can just be used as a mouthpiece. And I think that's, I think it's helpful because fans are taking the initiative to, push against efforts to try to define them in certain ways. But, I wanted to raise a point about the concerts that happen, at the border, at the DMZ, and the way that K-pop stars have participated in these kind of like conciliatory or friendship sort of events. And that shifts back and forth depending on what the kind of current political climate is, whether or not there's engagement or non-engagement. So to say that they then bear the responsibility to do more, it's not clear that the structure of the industry actually offers them that opportunity. Their roles are really circumscribed, and they often cannot speak on those things. It's not really a choice. I mean, even if they wanted to, they would be violating a contract or violating their
But
obligation.
then, shouldn't industry allow them to do that or not? I mean,
Professor Shin, can I jump in?
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm so sorry for how big my face is in this room. This is horrible.
You're beautiful.
This is such a disaster. Is it, Katerina, can you make me small? Is there a way to make me smaller? This is terrible. Okay, I'm sorry. I wanted to just share, I was thinking, how can I contribute to this conversation? Because I have so many thoughts, and it's really a complicated question. But when I was in Seoul a few weeks ago, and had the incredible privilege to interview Mr. Lee Soo-man in his office, and then we proceeded to have lunch, and then my partner Lee 감독님 said, okay, you can ask whatever question you want to ask now. And just on the fly, I thought, well, I really want to know how you manage the sort of relationship with China. How do you manage that as a corporation, as a business? And he gave a really, really interesting answer, which I can't replicate right now. But he basically spoke to the delicacy of this, the delicate and uncomplicated relationship and the difficulty that it is, managing this kind of relationship. How do you walk that thin line? When you have this enormous market. K-pop needs to, of course, continue to succeed and thrive. And then, we get into this whole question of our idols that are also, they're part of the corporation. Rather than kind of, they have to manage their own sort of selves, and they're part of the corporation. But the relationship, the South Korea-China relationship, and South Korea, United States, and Japan, and North Korea, and Russia, this is all so complicated. And so I think in theory, it sounds great. Yes, idols they have the platform, they have the mic, they should speak out and inspire as they do, young people in the world to take action. But we all know that the reality of it is much more complicated, both on the corporate side, and also I think resonating with Dave's comment, does that move the needle? Is that really does saying something in that platform, is that going to get us where we need to go? I just wanted to kind of reflect on that conversation that really stayed with me.
Okay, so Yumi, any thought or?
Yeah, because I have no interest in, meaning I'm not benefiting from K-pop or industry or something like that. I speak my mind. And I think some of the reasons of K-pop success, and also some of the limitations of K-pop success, are related to this question. And what is music? I don't know, but we enjoy music because of that just reflects certain minds and issues. And in the US side, hip-hop singers are talking a lot of things, good or bad, and then they're talking their minds and giving us messages and made us think about it. And then K-pop stars are successful because they address certain things for us, and then they're comforting us and beautiful. But at the same time, to be a musician, to be beyond this kind of platform, then I think they should develop K-pop should be more diversified. And then if they feel they need to talk about East Asian human rights, and then they should talk about it in a beautiful way and express it musically. And I think it's not just North Korea. We shouldn't target North Korea. South Korea, a lot of human rights violations too, and China too. I think they should be able to speak in a broader way. I hope.
Okay, so this is a beauty of being academic. So you can disagree gracefully. He's my good buddy, but still we disagree on many things, right? Yeah, okay. So I'd like to open to the floor. We got about like 20 minutes or so. So please come to the micro and then say who you are, and then ask question, not lecture. Okay. So let's go from this side. Yeah. So we might take maybe 2 questions, then yeah. Put together, yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty loud, so I can just ask it. So this is a question.
Say who you are, yeah.
Oh, okay. My name is Vivian, and I'm a student at Stanford, and I'm a third-year student in international relations and Asian studies. So thank you so much, first of all, for all your comments. My question is for the whole panel, but I think in particular I'm interested in Professor Kang's thoughts as a teacher of Intro to IR. Both in the documentary yesterday and in today's panel of speakers, we see descriptions of an essential Koreanness, both in the context of K-pop and in the context of North Korea, and in the case of the New York Times journalist, the Arirang gaze. And the way that it's described in the documentary yesterday is sort of Hanguk-cheon, which seems to suggest that there is something Korean about all of these things we seem to understand, both in the humanities and social sciences. As a student that is interested in the intersection of politics and policy and cultural studies, I always struggle with the difficulty of combining both of these things, sometimes even considered controversial or too provocative. For example, in Brian Mai, who's the cleanest race. We studied that last quarter with Professor Moon and Professor Zerf. How can we study culture in the context of politics and international relations without being provocative or essentializing?
Okay, great.
This one take 2?
Yeah, take 2. Let's take 2, yeah.
Sorry, mine is a little less eloquent. My name is Nali. I'm a third-year student here in computer science. I wanted to expand upon what Professor Cho brought up about the idols performing for North Korean people, maybe at the border. I know specifically Red Velvet a few years ago had a performance, and it was like a big talk in the fandom. I was wondering, actually specifically from Professor Kang and Professor Moon, because you said you don't have as much interest in K-pop, did that did that have any impact beyond the fandom, or like did it? I guess crudely, did it do anything? Do these performances do anything? I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, those are 2 great questions. So let's take.
Yeah, and I'll try and be brief because you've opened up. You could write books about this question, right? But I have changed my view on this over the years. We grow up as scholars knowing that we're going to be universal truths and everything is systematic around the world, right? And we don't want to be called Orientalists saying it's just different, right? Which is what you're talking about. But I've changed my mind over the years. We use Europe as the measure of everything, and we slap it onto Asia as if it's going to fit. And I don't agree. The question comes in. It's a fundamental scholarly question. What's similar and what's different? Wouldn't we expect a region that has different philosophy, history, culture, social organization, language, religion, to have politics function differently? I mean, intuitively, it would be a little different. And our task as scholars is to not go too far. We're just different. That's why I sort of winced. It's a little essentializing. All Koreans are the same. But there is stuff that's very Korean about it. And so to dismiss that question out of hand, I think, is not scholarly. You should ask it and be aware of it, and then you can say, and that's really where we're going to, and even putting it this way is really provocative for social scientists who are like, no. But I think we should. Is it similar? Is it different?
Okay, Michelle, and then,
Yeah. I wanted to say, to this question of do the concerts, the friendship concerts, that sort of thing, do anything? I don't know how to answer that question in policy or political terms, but I will answer it as, just someone who is interested in, like, kind of looking very closely at and reading gestures, right? So I remember Kim Jong-un, he actually was claimed to have chosen Red Velvet, handpicked them because he really wanted to see them. And they were photographed, actually, with him. And so what does that put out into the world? I mean, I'm sure that those images never made it into North Korea or circulated very much. But it introduces this idea of the kind of contradictions of The official policy being, everything South Korean in terms of culture industries is corrupt and decadent and bad, and and then to see, actually, no, there are some cracks. There's a certain appeal. There might be a certain interest in trying to kind of create thaw relations a bit, by having these kinds of events. So, does it create this kind of definitive flip? Obviously not. We talked about that yesterday, right? There's this continual oscillation between friendship or engagement and non-engagement, right? But it does something in the sense that, and this is me as like a media scholar, like putting out into the world new ideas through images and texts, and what that does to move the needle a bit, perhaps, in what it's possible to think about what's happening there.
Okay. So maybe let's take the 2 more questions, then come to Dafna and Yumi. Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha James, and I'm at the University of Texas, and I'm actually in communication studies. And so my question, based on what you mentioned, Dr. Kang, about the inherent interdisciplinariness of Korean studies, is how best to be really thoughtful and respectful of Korean studies when doing work in other disciplines. But I know that there's a lot of people studying K-pop not in East Asian studies. How do we kind of bring those things together in a really respectful way? And that's for all the panelists. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz. I am a sophomore here at Stanford studying economics. So I wanted to ask about the spread of misinformation and its influence in public perception of issues surrounding K-pop in North Korea, something along the lines of what Professor Kang was talking about earlier. So given the rise of social media and the digital age, what does misinformation about K-pop in North Korea look like? How does it influence how people outside of academia view these issues, and what can students who care about these topics do to address such misinformation?
So maybe let's turn to Dafna and Yumi first, and then come to Michelle and David.
You know what? I think this is a perfect opportunity to put in a plug for Dave's program, Next Gen, because I was I'm a lucky recipient of that program. And I think this is to answer, I think, the last question. So Dave has this amazing program, which, Dave, if you want to talk about it, I'd love to give you the floor, but it helps people like me and Yumi and Michelle, in our ivory tower, those of us who are immersed in our scholarship, who are, used to speaking with our students or with other colleagues about the problems that we're trying to work through, and help us develop tools to broaden our scholarship and to be able to be more accessible to the broad public. And so this is to answer the last question. How do we counter misinformation? How do we address all these misconceptions? And I think a lot of the burden is on us, on scholars, who, again, we're used to working on the sort of these. We're so detail oriented, and we're kind of immersed in this a certain kind of network. We come into a room assuming that a certain amount of basic knowledge that's shared in the room, and to learn to make that switch and to be able to say, this is how I'm going to translate the things I'm thinking about, so that all of us now can think about this problem or understand it in a slightly different way. So I think the kinds of program like the one that Next Gen is helping, I hope, is helping us as scholars really sharpen that tool set and be able to speak more broadly to audiences.
So Yumi, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to just briefly talk about interdisciplinary, because I think this is the question for Korean studies as well. I mean, my students are amazing, and they're studying a lot of things. I'm sorry for just being very proud of them. And then they study some Korea-related topics, but at the same time, they're aiming at speaking to the broader fields. For instance, history, communication, literary studies, and so forth. And they are picking up, the Korea is not just Korea. So that's why some of the conceptual theoretical issues, Korean phenomena is sometimes, it's not just general. It's something new, and that's why people are interested in that. How to explain it the both Korean characteristics. At the same time, these conceptual and theoretical issues are very important. That Korean scholars in Korean studies are moving forward into that direction, and they're kind of creating their own influences. I push students to be a big scholar. And then I think in the communication or other fields, sociology and interdisciplinary fields, they also need to know Korea. Korea is not just one cases and then data. And without knowing the context of these data and then things, you could make mistakes, or you could can compare orange with apples. So I think if you can approach questions from these disciplinary fields, I think you should invest something in Korean studies, right? Learning Korean history, IR, and political sciences. So these kind of things are moving forward, kind of very interactive.
So maybe share David briefly.
Could I briefly then? Thank you, Dafna, for teeing it up, right? Thank you, Korea Foundation. With Victor Cha, I run a next-gen program where we take about 10 young scholars every couple years. And we tell them we want Dafna, right? Because right now we speak about not enough information about North Korea. There's two types of people who affect U.S. policy to North Korea. There's a tiny band of us who actually are North Korea scholars, IR. And then the rest are functional experts who do like nukes or deterrence or whatever else in DC. They don't know anything about North Korea, right? And we're the only ones. Victor, the number of times I've been at a briefing like at the CIA where there's 30 people around the table and Victor will text me and he'll say, we're the only 2 Koreans in the room. Right? It's okay, you can be white, you know, but the point is they haven't put the time in. They're all functional experts. And we say, Dafna knows so much more about North Korea than any of them. North Korea is not just nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons, right? You know, to understand why they do what they do, how they respond, why they're surviving, culture, history, language, right? So there's so much more room for this. So what we do is we say to them, if we don't speak up, we're the ones who write the books that everyone reads. Mm-hmm. If we don't speak up, they're going to fill it with people who don't know what they're talking about. So Next Gen is an attempt to get people. You may be the only professor within 500 miles in Arizona or whatever who knows Korea. Mm-hmm. And an issue comes around, we want to help you learn how to be a public intellectual. So that's the program, Young Scholars.
Michelle, you want to say something? Or?
So I am trying to keep track of both the questions. I wanted to just agree so strongly with what you were saying, David, that
thank you.
Everything you said, but the Koreanness of Korean studies and the Koreanness of all of the things that we're looking at, yeah, we should be really careful that we're not essentializing it, that we're not thinking about it as this, fixed and static, thing, Korea or Koreanness. So the specificity is always going to be, I think, where I begin. Like you have to look at things about, like, in their details, where, like who, what, when, where, why, right? And that's going to bring you to the importance of Korea as a site, and also as, a space, a culture, set of practices, all of that, right? So you can guard against essentialism in that way if you just think, am I really looking at this object and getting my conclusions from it? Or am I bringing a preconceived set of ideas because I already know what Koreanness is? I wanted to say one quick thing about the misinformation, disinformation. Okay, the stakes of misinformation about K-pop and about North Korea are quite different. But I do think there was some misinformation about what was going on in K-pop fandoms, and a comparison between anonymous and K-pop fans. And it only took a little bit of time to kind of poke through that. Anonymous, the hacker organization. Hackers. Yeah. So cybersecurity experts were like, what is this K-pop stan thing? And then they realized, wait, there are very different goals, very different things happening. So we need more people who are doing that kind of public culture research, data analysis.
Computer science.
To be part of it. Yeah, to look at K-pop and Korea-related topics.
Okay, now we got about 5 minutes left, and we got 5 people. So if you can promise to ask a question with no more than 30 seconds, I'd like to give to all of you opportunity, and we can wrap up. So So Gia, so no more than 30 seconds.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gia. I'm a master's student studying East Asian Studies here at Stanford. So my question is, what do you think are some of the benefits of studying Korean studies here in the U.S. institutions or somewhere outside Korea? Because I'm Korean who came to America to study Korean studies, and one of the questions I got from my Korean friends when I told them I'm gonna go to America and study Korean studies was why?
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
why study Korean studies in America when you're already in Korea? So I want to hear about the benefits of studying Korean studies outside Korea. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so very quick, yeah.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm a first year here at Stanford studying math, and I want to talk about, so there's been conversation about the want of K-pop idols to from fans wanting their idols to speak out on to their platform. However, companies often don't want them to do this as it's legally issues and may alienate other parts of their fandom. Do you think this is their want to do for their K-pop idols to speak out is a reflection of the social activism aspect of K-pop fandoms?
Okay, so very quickly. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Jenny. I am not a Stanford affiliate, but I am here. My question kind of ties back to the girl who stood right before me. She mentioned how Koreans were coming here for resources that may not be available to them in Korea. And when you mentioned the resources that are being set up for Korean education, so in this case, North Korea, I feel like because they're so little known, it's so easy to sensationalize what we do see. And so because there is no spokesperson or icon to either speak or educate people on North Korea, is there, and this might sound very ignorant, but is there a reason that we can't bring North Korean defectors to this program and to equip them and empower them to teach people who don't know them about themselves? And that's my question.
Okay, Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten. I'm also a master's student with East Asian Studies. So academia is increasingly competitive. Finding a job is quite difficult, especially for those who study in area studies. So as quote-unquote Koreanist, how do you balance your area studies with the demands of traditional departments like history, political science, or sociology? Professor Zerwi spoke about this a lot in the fall. And how do you make the case for broader contributions to the field, especially when you are a junior and up-and-coming scholar?
Okay, final question.
Hello, my name is Melody. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Irvine. In terms of cultural diplomacy, in the past years, K-pop stars have been sent to perform in North Korea. But from what panelists have said yesterday, diplomacy or discussion to reach out to North Korea has been a little bit lost at this point. Do you think that entertainment is tied to this too? And how could South Korea use culture, K-pop, or entertainment itself to bridge the gap when in the past it wasn't able to significantly accomplish that? What are the actual steps, especially when one of the panelists mentioned that K-pop stars themselves don't have a chance to speak out? Or do you believe it has impacted it a tremendous way, but we haven't been seeing it?
Okay, so I'm gonna give 30 seconds to each panelist. So we go
Answer one
reverse way.
question.
So Dafna, Michelle, Yumi, and David. If you speak more than 30 seconds, then your mic is off. Okay? Dafna, go ahead.
Oh, I actually need a second to think. So somebody else.
Okay.
Okay, so I wrote down the questions. I'm going to try to hit as much as I can. Why study Korean studies outside of Korea? Because in a space like this, you have so many people from all over who are bringing lots of different perspectives, and that can only enrich your understanding of Korea. Should K-pop stars use their platforms for activism? I wanted to say earlier when we were talking about whether K-pop fans should be spokespeople to raise awareness of human rights violations in North Korea. K-pop as an industry and K-pop idols, they respond to what fans want. So if you all decided that you wanted your favorite K-pop celebrities to really raise awareness of this issue, then I think they would. So there's this symbiosis of fan idol, and we see the industry responding to what their fans are talking about. So yeah, that's where I would leave it.
Thank you, and Yumi.
Just why you study Korea outside of Korea? You should, because you have a variety of information and fields to put Korea in comparative perspective. So you cannot replace this whole academic environment of the United States by studying in Korea. That's one thing. Just, I'm done. Just Kirsten's question on this. You can do it, but you can do more. So you should study Korea. At the same time, you should be perfect and superb in your discipline. A lot of work. Just agony that I've been struggling with, and I couldn't conquer it.
David, final word.
Very briefly, I'm happy to talk to all of you about this afterwards at coffee, but I'm taking back the term area specialist. Yeah, I've spent my life studying Korea, and I think it's important that we know it. I wouldn't worry if, for those of you who are wondering how you're going to manage being this discipline, know something about the world. I say to my students, have a point of view about an important topic. Think it through. That's what we're doing. Right? So don't worry about it. Come on.
Okay, thank you so much to our panelists and audience and Dafna.
And Dafna's looming head.
Right. So we'll take quick break, and then we'll have a final session at 10:45. So maybe have a coffee or get some fresh air, then come back by 10:45. Thank you so much.
Excluding VIPs, everyone please exit the room.
So that's why we should just speak briefly, then have conversation.
I know.
Thank you.
Just trying to keep it short.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Yeah.
That was great.
So we can.
Something different.
Should I give this to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I have it. Yes.
How are we doing? Yeah. Is there slides on the next presentation or? You all good?
완전 따로 날라오는데 두 번째 거에 다 있어요. 오리지널하고 그리고 저녁은 그 5시까지 가시니까 제가 보기 저희는 뭐 안 받을 것 같고 수업만 들어드리고
Check 1, 2, check.
영상 혹시 어디서 그걸 해요?
Check 1, 2.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you.
Check 1, 2.
다 있어요.
음악과 퍼포먼스로 모두가 하나가 되는 레지그네이션 SM 차원의 국가 탄생을 선포합니다.
5월 방학하자마자 갔어요.
time? Sure. SM의 음악과 퍼포먼스로 모두가 하나가 되는
After presentation, right? What is it? We can switch it after the presentation. Isn't it only speech? Huh? Isn't it only speech? And then at the podium? Yeah, I thought you was.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So we don't need to switch it. Raymond will just.
Yeah. Because you introduce.
Yes. His interpreter will be here, and Raymond can move it. Raymond knows like where to put it.
Sure.
Everything.
We'll play the video and then. Yes. Then introduce Mr. Lee. Yes. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just like, you can see my way. Yes. There'll be a video. We would be
어떻게 찍으실라 찍으실래? 지금 왜냐면 계속 기다릴 수가 없으니까 either come back or take them out.
Question was the same.
The way or
I think so. So how's it go? Run video first. Yeah, that's right. So confirmation. Run video first. Haley. I'm so sorry. She needs to have the order.
just a moment.
So run video first, and Shin.
Great. Okay, Robin.
And then
Well, I think then.
I'll be sitting on video, sure. And so I can drop this with you. Yes. And then you come out. Yes. Or do you want me to sit? And then there are some sitting up here, right?
Is that your?
That's where Cheryl told me. I know me too, but there's
Yeah.
I'm really honored. Yeah. We'll see you soon.
Marcy, I'm a pinch hitter today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Spelled the same way?
Yeah.
Oh, that is me. I guess I know.
아니 그러니까 처음에 지금
So I'm going to be in the audience.
So I think you can bring them. Yeah. All right. So you are ready for the last session? Yes? Yeah, give me a big hand. Okay, so we are going to have a great session with Chairman Lee Soo-man from SM. But before we do that, we'd like to show some video for a few minutes, and then he'll come here. Then I'll introduce him. Then he'll make speech. Okay? So let's start with the video. Yeah. Thank you. It was a great video, and I'm in a shock. So I have great honor to introduce Lee Soo-man 선생님 today. And I left Korea in 1983, so I grew up in Korea in 1970s. When I was growing up, Lee Soo-man 선생님 was like 수호 plus for me, for my generation. And for me, from 1983, for a while, I was somewhat disconnected because there's no internet, and I can read newspaper, but only like 2 weeks later, right? And then all of a sudden, this K-pop was emerging. And initially, someone told me, "Do you know H-O-T?" So I said, "Hot." No, it's not hot. It's H-O-T. But for me, I had no idea because I was totally disconnected from Korean culture. So when I was like in high school in 1970s, there's a very popular song, 사랑하고 미워하는 그 모든 것을. This was really popular song that I was listening and growing up. But now Lee Soo-man 선생님 has become really pioneer of this K-pop, and has been always a first mover, not a follower for K-pop. And you saw that he built really SM empire, and producing a lot of artists from H.O.T., EXO, and aespa now. You saw in the documentary yesterday. So I don't really need to introduce him because all of you know him or about him. He has a lot of awards, and he's still very influential globally. But I think without him, without Lee Soo-man 선생님, I don't think we could have K-pop of today. So let's welcome Lee Soo-man 선생님 to the podium.
감사합니다. What a compliment. Hi everyone. My name is Soo-man Lee. Everybody calls me SM Lee. And I'm the founder and chief producer of SM Entertainment. Today is a very important day for us, actually USA, and South Korea. As you know, the President Biden is in Seoul discussing the future with our new President Yoon Suk-yeol. And I'm here to discuss the future of K-pop with these wonderful audiences.
Yes.
President Biden went to Korea from America, right? I came from Korea to America. Since President Biden will speak an American language in Korea, so that's why I'm going to speak a Korean language in America. Is it okay to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. This is called Hallyu, okay? 그렇다면 이제 한국말로 하겠습니다. 네.
So during
아주
Q&A, I'm going to use my microphone. So let them know.
스탠포드 대학의
So,
쇼렌스타인 아시아 태평양 연구센터의 코리아 프로그램
after
우선
his speech,
창립
then Martin made
20주년을
three
축하드립니다.
comments, and then
I would like to begin by first extending my sincere congratulations to the Korea program at Stanford Shorenstein A Park on their 20th anniversary.
지난 20여 년 동안 이 스탠포드 코리아 프로그램이 한국과 한반도의 미래를 위해서 보여주신 그 열정적인 노력들, 또 한국 학자 양성과 지원, 그리고 한미 양국의 유대를 강화하기 위한 다양한 활동과 그런 노고에 다시 한번 감사드립니다.
I would like to thank the Korea program at Stanford for passionately working towards the future of Korea and the Korean Peninsula for the past 20 years, In addition to fostering and supporting Korean scholars while taking part in various activities to strengthen the ties between Korea and the United States.
특별히 조금 전에 저한테 어마어마한 칭찬을 해주고 내려가신 신기욱 학장님과 함께 세계 석학과 또 전문가, 학계와 정계 인사들과 함께 한국학의 새로운 지평을 구상하는 뜻깊은 자리에 저까지 초대해 주셔서 대단히 다시 한번 감사드립니다.
Along with Director Gi-Wook Shin, who just gave me a very, very generous and kind introduction, I'd like to thank you as well as for inviting me to such a meaningful event where the world's greatest scholars and experts ranging from academia to politics have gathered here in one place to envision a new horizon for Korean studies.
함께 해주신 또 많은 내빈 여러분들 그리고 온라인으로 함께하고 계신 분들 대단히 반갑습니다. 지난 2018년 컨퍼런스에는 우리 SM이 와서 또 초청을 받아서 같이 참석을 했었고요. 이번 컨퍼런스에는 저하고 또 엑소의 우리 슈퍼파워를 갖고 있는 수호군이 함께 자리를 하고 있습니다.
And to all the distinguished guests here and watching online as well, it is a true pleasure to be with you. SM Entertainment was invited to and attended a conference at Stanford back in 2018, and this year Suho from EXO and I are here for this year's conference.
한반도는 1950년부터 분단 국가라는 아픈 현실을 품고 있습니다. 그러나 전쟁 이후에 세계 어느 나라보다도 한국은 정말 가장 빠르게 세계에서 도약하고 또 경제 발전과 눈부신 특히 문화 성장을 이룬 한류의 나라입니다.
Since 1950, Korea has experienced the painful reality of being a divided nation. After the Korean War, the Republic of Korea grew at a truly unprecedented speed. And at the center of the Korean wave, or Hallyu, a country that has achieved remarkable economic and in particular cultural growth.
조금 이따가 더 어려운 얘기가 나올 텐데 지금부터 이렇게 버벅대시면 지금은 쉬운 it's a very easy sentence and easy words. If I'm going to speak a little harder one, then how come? So I hope you can understand. And so is it okay to you? Okay. 저는 한류 탄생을 견인한 어떻게 보면 K-팝을 만들었죠. 그리고 또 계속 개척하고 제 평생을 어떻게 보면 K-팝과 함께 한류의 역사와 함께 하고 있고 또 지금도 컨텐츠를 프로듀싱하고 세계가 문화로 연결된 그런 미래의 엔터테인먼트 세상에 대한 비전을 이루기 위해서 현재도 계속 이 나이에도 도전하고 있습니다.
I've spent my entire life with K-pop and as part of Hallyu's history by creating and pioneering the path of K-pop which led to the birth of Hallyu. Even to this day, I still produce content and continue to challenge myself in order to fulfill my vision of a future entertainment era that connects the entire world through culture.
세계화와 기하 이제 어려워집니다. 네, 이게 스탠포드라서 제가 어려운 거 다 뽑아다가 여기다 썼는데, so I selected all the harder words and I put it in my sentences and in my speech. So maybe you couldn't understand it. That's what I want. Okay. So I'm going to test you guys. 세계화와 기하급수적인 okay. Exponentially this development in technology. I'm talking about that. Okay. So 기하급수적인 기술 혁명의 돌풍 속에서 K-팝과 한류는 더욱 그 컨텐츠의 힘을 증명하고 있습니다. 지역과 국경 또 세대와 이데올로기를 넘어서서 세계인의 마음을 하나로 연결하고 있는 것 같습니다. 그리고 이 상상을 뛰어넘는 기하급수적인 기술의 진화도 정말 요즘 놀랍지만 하루하루 더 놀라운 것은 K-팝과 SM에서 추구하는 한류에 내재되어 있는 뿌리 깊은 휴머니티에 우리가 서로 갖고 있는 그러한 공감 또 팬덤과 프로수모들의 폭발적인 창조성입니다.
Amidst globalization and a truly exponential rate of technological revolution, K-pop and Hallyu have strongly proved the power of content and connected people as one, going beyond regions, borders, generations, and ideologies. The exponential growth of technology, which goes beyond our imagination, is quite impressive. But what's more impressive than that is the sense of humanity and empathy that's deeply rooted within K-pop and the Hallyu that SM strives for, and the explosive creative power of the fandom and prosumers.
You can take off your mask, she said.
Okay.
괜찮아요? 네. 저도 잘 이해가 안 되는 게 가끔 있어요. 제가 써놓고도 sometimes I don't understand what I write down. 저는 항상 오늘 창조에 대한 얘기를 많이 할 건데 이 창조성을 연결해서 창발이 이루어지는 플랫폼, 전 세계의 팬덤과 프로수머 그리고 셀러브리티를 연결하는 문화 생태계를 꿈꾸면서 이를 만들기 위해서 노력해 왔고 이제 그것이 여러분들 앞에 곧 현실로 보여질 것이라고 생각합니다.
I've always dreamed of and tried to develop a platform where production is generated through the connection of creativity and a culture ecosystem that can connect the worldwide fandom, prosumers, and celebrities all together. And I believe this will soon become reality.
한류와 K-팝은 꿈을 이루기 위해 노력하는 그 미래의 전 세계 수많은 미래에 이런 훌륭한 사람들이 될, 즉 아티스트도 있고 또 창작자, 특히 프로스모들에게 그 꿈을 이루게 하는 시작이 될 것이라는 저의 비전을 오늘 여러분들과 함께 같이 나누고 꼭 이루고 싶습니다.
Today, I would like to share my vision of Hallyu and K-pop becoming the starting point for many future global artists, creators, and prosumers who are working towards their dreams and aspirations.
문화의 역사, 특히 음악서부터 시작했지만 음악의 역사를 이렇게 가만히 되돌아보면 역사의 기록들을 보고 역사를 이렇게 가만히 보면 특히 제가 젊었던 시절, 저도 젊었던 시절이 있었습니다. 1970년 뭐 그때 또 80년대 이때 그 경제 대국들의 그 문화가 세계 문화를 이끄는 그런 시대에 저는 살았습니다. 즉 economy first, culture following next라고 하는 그렇게 부를 수 있는 제가 그렇게 생각하는 그렇게 글을 쓰고 그렇게 생각한 그런 시대에 저는 살았습니다. 저는 반대로 다르게 생각을 해봤습니다. 문화의 힘으로 도리어 세계를 이끌 수 있지 않을까 하는 역발상을 한번 해봤습니다.
From the start, the goal of K-pop was globalization. If we look back on the recent history of culture, in particular music, when I was young, in the 1970s and 80s, this was an era of economy first, culture following next, where economic powerhouses also led the world culturally. However, I decided to turn this on its head. Culture has the power to lead the world.
좋은 문화 콘텐츠를 만들어서 사랑을 받으면 또 관심이 자꾸 생기는 거고요. 어디서 만들어졌을까? 또 그런 콘텐츠를 결국은 만든 나라의 글과 그리고 그 나라의 문화 사람한테도 또 관심이 가고 그 나라가 또 사랑을 받게 됩니다. 그것은 나아가서 바로 그 나라의 국부로 이어지는 현상을 만들 것입니다. 이렇게 저는 생각을 하게 된 것입니다.
If we create good cultural content and receive attention and love from across the world, the writing of the country that created the content, as well as the culture of that country, will also receive attention and love, which will further lead to the national wealth of the country. This is what I thought, and this is how I went against the conventional wisdom.
즉 과거의 역사라는 것은 economy first, culture following next 였었는데 저는 반대로 culture first, economy next 이렇게 생각하고 그렇게 우리 회사에서 얘기하고 그때는 많은 사람들이 제 얘기를 안 들었기 때문에 우리 회사에서만 한 20명 앞에서 얘기를 하고 1989년 SM 엔터테인먼트 전신 엔터테인먼트 주식회사가 아닌 SM 기획을 만들고 그 다음에 이제 다시 주식회사를 만들게 되는데 그때부터 저는 체계적인 그 프로듀싱과 매니지먼트를 시작하게 됩니다.
In other words, with the past history of economy first, culture following next, this could instead become culture first, economy next. And with this philosophy, I established SM Entertainment, which was very small, only about 20 employees back then. And this was the predecessor of SM Entertainment Company Limited, which was set up in 1989, and started a systematic producing and management system.
글로벌 스타가 될 잠재력이 있는 인재를 먼저 캐스팅, 발굴하고 그 다음에 프로듀싱하면서 지금의 K-팝, 그때 시작은 SM 팝입니다. SM 팝이라는 컨텐츠를 만들어서 1997년에 저희 직원들에게 이렇게 얘기했습니다. 이제 우리는 해외로 나갈 것이다. 혼자 꿈을 꾸면 한낱 꿈에 불과하지만 다 같이 같은 꿈을 꾸면 그것은 바로 미래의 시작이다. 이렇게 멋있게 얘기하고 해외 진출을 무지하게 힘들게 고생하면서 시작했습니다. 울면서 때로는. He's translating it like, oh, it's not in there. So 하면서 like what? 울면서 what? 울면서 what is that? Where is it?
I discovered and produced global stars from individuals who I thought had potential, and created content called SM Pop, known today as K-pop, and declared proudly to our SM employees in 1997 that now we are going abroad. If you dream alone, it's just a dream, but if we dream the same dream together, it will be the beginning of a new future. And that is how we began to expand overseas, which was at times a very difficult process.
아시는 바와 같이 아시아로 먼저 중국 제일 먼저 2000년에 중국을 바로 핫하게 H.O.T와 함께 여러분들 아시겠지만 H.O.T는 High Five of Teenagers의 약자입니다. 그래서 아시아로 그 다음에 이제 아시아에서도 1등을 하려면 일본에 가서 일본이 제일 큰 시장이었거든요. 그래서 일본에 가서 1등을 해야 되겠다. 그래서 아시아를 갔고 보아가 또 1등을 해주고 뭐 동방신기가 또 1등을 해주고 지금도 현재 그 동방신기가 이제 콘서트가 없어졌지만 2019년에 그때 팬데믹이 오기 전에까지 2019년 조사로는 95만 명을 이끄는 콘서트를 한 제일 콘서트장의 오디언스가 가장 많은 팬들을 가진 그 가수는 일본 가수, 전 세계 가수, 한국 가수 다 합쳐서 일본에서 콘서트한 가수로서는 동방신기가 1등을 했습니다. 세미나 가지고 바이러스들이 팬데믹을 일으키게 되는데 다시 콘서트를 이제 시작하게 됩니다. 그래서 이거는 뭐 트랜슬레이션 안 해도 됩니다. 자랑하는 거니까. 그래서 이제 아시아와 또 아시다시피 유럽으로 갔었고요. 유럽에서 이제 다시 미국으로 오게 되고 가장 먼저 우리나라 사람들이 이해를 하게 된 것은 바로 그 불란서에서의 저희가 미국을 사실은 먼저 왔습니다. 그러니까 불란서 유럽을 가기 전에 그랬는데 미국에 왔는데 한국에서는 조용해요. 이상하게도. 왜 그렇게 잘 이유를 몰랐는데 미국은 좀 친하고 뭐 편하고 다 알고 뭐 다 비슷비슷하고 이렇게 생각한 것 같아요. 그리고 뭐 또 한국 교포가 많이 갔겠지 이렇게 생각을 했던 것 같습니다. 근데 유럽에 가서 불란서에 갔을 때 그 루브르 박물관 앞에서 프레시 맙이 펼쳐지면서 막 콘서트를 하루만 하면 어떡하냐, 우리는 어떡하냐, 표 못 샀는데 그러면서 하루라도 더 해라 이런 데몬스트레이션 같은 게 생기면서 그것이 전 세계에 알려지고 그것이 한국에 계시는 어른들 또 언론기관에 알려지면서 이게 진짜구나. 거기 보니까 전부 다 외국 사람들이거든요. 그리고 한국말도 못할 것 같은 그런 사람들이 막 한국말로 막 얘기하고 이러면 이상하겠지만 어쨌든 그게 알려지면서 한국에서 저를 이제 그만 욕하고 야단치고 그렇게 됐습니다. 네. 그래서 유럽으로 그리고 이제 미국으로 이렇게 우리가 무대를 넓혀가게 됐는데 그런 과정에서 한류를 단순한 음악의 수출이 아니라 국부 나라가 부자가 되는 그러한 자산으로 축적하는 그리고 지속적이고 세계적인 무브먼트로 만드는 데 주력했습니다. 오늘 학장님이 말씀하신 것처럼 first mover가 되도록 노력했습니다. 괜찮아요. 또 you don't have to translate all what I say.
So in the process of expanding our spectrum of activities and territories, we first decided to go to China with HOT, which stands for High Five of Teenagers. We thought it was important that we establish a foothold in China. And then we went to Japan. As you know, BOA also came in first in Japan. And TVXQ actually in 2019, before the pandemic, established a record for having 950,000 fans in the audience. And as far as I'm aware, this is the most fans that have attended a concert anywhere, not just in Korea, Japan,
Thank you.
and the world.
It's not written in the paper. Wow,
And
super.
And then we actually came to the United States, but back then there wasn't much of a reaction. Maybe it was because there were already Korean Americans in Korea, so there wasn't too much of a reaction. But what happened was that we then turned to France, where there was a K-pop flash mob. And what was surprising was that this continued day after day. There were demands to keep doing this day after day. And this became known back in Korea. And people began to notice, oh, this is actually a very important and new phenomenon. And through these processes, I focused on making Hallyu not just a simple form of just an economic export, but a continuous global movement that can accumulate national wealth and to be a first mover in the entertainment space.
Because he is, so everybody says Stanford is the super and the number one in the world. Wow. He didn't skip any word. 저는 프로듀서로서의 길을 걷기 시작한 순간부터 이 조직이 시스테매틱하게 혼자 하는 게 아니기 때문에 시스테매틱하게 움직이도록 문화를 프로듀싱하는 기술을 컬처 테크놀로지, 즉 IT에 비해서 IT가 막 이제 시작하고 유명해질 때 저는 CT라고 그러한 새로운 단어로 명명하고 그 컬처 테크놀로지로 또 컬처 테크놀로지 자체를 개발해 왔습니다.
From the moment I began walking my path as a producer, I coined the term CT, or culture technology, which is a culture producing skill that allows an organization to move in a systematic way because this process cannot be done alone. It needs an organization.
한국의 아주 오래전 옛날인 고려 시대, 조선 시대 그런 여러 유물을 통해서 우리는 한국의 그런 찬란한 도예 문화가 존재했었다는 것을 알게 된 것이 많습니다. 아쉽게도 그런데 그 당시의 기록이 남아있지를 않아서 만드는 기술의 노하우가 현대까지 이어지는데 굉장히 어려움이 있었고 또 장인이 될 제자가 없었으면 이어지지 않고 끊기고 없어지고 이렇게 된 그러한 기술, 즉 전수되지 못한 기술이 있었다는 것도 알게 되면서 문화의 기록과 매뉴얼의 중요성을 절감했습니다.
Through various historical artifacts from Korea's Goryeo dynasty and also the Joseon dynasty, we know that Korea had a brilliant pottery culture. But unfortunately, there were very few records left from this time, which made it difficult to carry on this tradition and the know-hows that had been accumulated by the artisans, and to carry those into the present. I came to understand that certain skills cannot be passed down if there is no student to become a craftsman, and I further realized the importance of having written cultural records and manuals.
따라서 저는 문화를 프로듀싱하는 전 과정을 저의 일을 어떻게 보면 하나의 기술인데 그 기술로서 우리가 과학이 이렇게 리튼하는 것처럼 기술로서 성문화해서 즉 글로 써서 또 공식도 만들고 그렇게 해서 매뉴얼화하는 작업과 함께 그것이 발전하는 과정도 또 필요하기 때문에 지속적으로 계속 성문화해서 글로 쓰고 그 매뉴얼을 다시 고쳐가면서 지식과 기술을 그 시대에 맞춰서 발전시켜야겠다는 생각을 했습니다.
As a result, I decided to codify, that is, to write down, the entire process of producing culture into a form of technology by creating a formula and manualizing it, while continuously recording its development process along with the knowledge and skills involved, revising it as needed to reflect the economy of the time.
컨텐츠를 만들어내는 프로듀싱 노하우를 체계화해서 매뉴얼화하고 또 성문화해서 발전시키고자 그래서 그 이름이 필요하잖아요. 그래서 CT라고 그때 IT가 막 유명할 때인데 저는 CT야 앞으로는 이렇게 생각하면서 CT, Culture Technology라고 명명한 것이었습니다.
I systematized, manualized, and codified the producing know-how of creating cultural content into what I coined CT, cultural technology, and this was to reflect the IT boom at the time. I thought it was important to put forth CT.
Thank you. 자꾸 제가 다르게 얘기해가지고 그런데 뭐 하나도 안 놓치네요 정말. 그리고 네 단계 그래서 그 CT를 일단 우리가 매니지먼트 회사로서 봤을 때는 그 네 단계의 스텝으로 정리했습니다. 즉 캐스팅, 트레이닝, 그리고 컨텐츠 프로듀싱, and 마케팅. 그래서 이 전체를 우리가 매니지먼트라고 하기도 하고 그래서 매니지먼트 시스템을 체계화한 저의 독자적인 프로듀싱 시스템 컬처 테크놀로지를 개발했습니다.
And organized this specifically into the 4 stages of casting, training, content producing, and marketing. With this, I developed my own original producing system called Cultural Technology, which systematized the management system.
CT는 K-팝의 성장 동력이고요. 그리고 SM의 근본적인 운영 체계입니다. 새로운 콘텐츠를 선보이기 위해 선두에 있는 기술을 활용하고 또 문화와 기술을 융합하는 전략입니다.
CT is the growth engine of K-pop, and it is also SM Entertainment's fundamental operating system. It is an innovative strategy that uses cutting-edge technology and combines culture with technology to showcase new forms of content.
이를 통해서 K-팝은 전 세계적인 종합 예술 콘텐츠가 되었습니다. 저는 그 우리의 SM 팝의 음악을 종합 예술이라고 부릅니다. 영화만 그랬었죠. 근데 지금은 음악이 종합 예술이다. 그래서 종합 예술 콘텐츠라고 컨텐트 또는 이렇게 말을 하고 있습니다. 한국의 아티스트 콘텐츠뿐만 아니라 한국의 프로듀싱 시스템이 이제 조금씩 밝혀지면서 이 비밀이 밝혀지면서 세계에서 주목이 돼가고 있는 것 같습니다.
Through this, K-pop has become a multidisciplinary form of art content that has now become global. I call our multidisciplinary art, which extends just beyond music, I call it SM pop. Now, not only Korea's artists and its cultural content, but its producing system has also been receiving high levels of attention across the world.
If you watch the movie, like a kung fu movie, always there is a kind of a hidden manual in the hidden place. So the story is going for that. I mean, so where is the manual? I have to find that and new kung fu. So I'm going to kill you, something like that. So you can find that manual in my company somewhere, maybe in my room, or if you cannot find it, then maybe you can try, my home. So that's why I'm going to try to have many homes, many houses, and all over the world. So don't try to do that, okay? SM의 프로듀싱은 K-pop 프로듀싱의 모델이 된 것 같습니다. 그래서 SM의 CT는 또 아마 hopefully 세계의 CT로 확장될 것이라고 생각합니다. The future of culture technology는 저하고 SM의 근원적인 비전이기도 합니다.
SM's producing has become a model for producing K-pop, and SM's CT, culture technology, will expand to become CT of the world. The future of culture technology is the fundamental vision that SM Entertainment and I have.
자, 이제 CT를 얘기했습니다. 그런데 저는 그 CT를 문화를 만드는 기술 이렇게 말씀을 드렸는데 문화를 만드는 기술에서 이제 진화하고 있습니다. 진화하려고 하고 있습니다. 문화의 생태계를 만드는 기술로 진화시키고 있습니다. 새로운 문화 생태계를 구축하고 있습니다.
And now I've spoken of CT up to this point. I am building a new cultural ecosystem by evolving CT from a culture making technology to a cultural ecosystem making technology.
우리는 그 프로수머들이 자발적으로 콘텐츠를 재창조하고 확산시키는 그러한 세상, 그것이 메타버스라고 얘기하고 있습니다. 바로 그 메타버스에 우리는 이미 살고 있습니다. 그 오리지널 콘텐츠, 저희가 만드는 킬러 콘텐츠라고 하는 오리지널 콘텐츠는 크리에이터로서 참가하는 많은 프로수머들, 우리의 팬들, 팬덤에 있는 프로수머들, 바로 크리에이터로 그들이 참여하는 순간 프로듀서로, not just the consumer가 아니고 프로수머의 프로듀서로서 리크리에이션을 통해서 가치가 점점 극대화되고 있습니다.
Today we are already living in a metaverse where prosumers can voluntarily recreate and spread content. Through the recreation of these prosumers who participate and create as creators on their own, the value of this original content, which we call killer contents, the value of this content increases.
프로수머와 함께하는 생태계를 만들고 선점하는 것은 누가 먼저 하느냐? 선점하는 것은 미래 문화 창조 산업의 화두가 될 것입니다. 오늘이라는 과거의 미래를 저와 SM은 가능하면 가장 앞서서 도전하고 또 준비하고 그리고 기다리고 있었습니다.
The creation and domination of this ecosystem with prosumers will become the talk of the future culture and creative industry. And this is the future that SM and I have been preparing, working towards, and waiting for ahead of anybody else.
SM의 모든 아티스트의 세계관이 융합되는 SM의 메타버스, SM 컬처 유니버스라고 부릅니다. 그 SM 컬처 유니버스는 K-팝과 한류가 한 세대의 그냥 열풍으로 끝나는 것이 아니라 영원히 사랑받는 콘텐츠가 되기를 바라는 그런 염원으로 오랜 동안 준비해온 세계관이자 비전이자 또 설계도입니다. 저는 이 세계관을 메타버설 오리진 스토리라고 명명하고 오래전부터 아티스트의 오리진 스토리와 세계관을 축적해 왔습니다.
In SM's metaverse, which is called the SM culture universe, all the worldviews of SM artists will combine and come together. This worldview, vision, and blueprint is one that we have been preparing for a very long time, with the hopes that K-pop and Hallyu will not just be the craze of one single generation, but content that's loved forever for a very long time. I coined this worldview the metaversal origin story, and I've been preparing these origin stories and the worldviews of our artists for quite a while.
Maybe as a fan, do you know that so what kind of power Suho has? Yes, he has a power to control the water. So fortunately, there is no water inside here, so I can say, I can insist that he has a power. Even one glass of water is not here, so it's closed, so he cannot use the power. Okay? So that's the origin story for hero Suho. Okay. So SM의 모든 아티스트의 세계관이 있습니다. 그래서 모든 아티스트의 세계관이 초거대 버추얼 세계관인 메타버설 오리진 스토리로 융합될 것입니다. 블록체인과 메타버스 기술을 결합해서 SM의 컨텐츠가 모두의 컨텐츠로 무한 확장될 것입니다. 시간과 공간을 초월해서 문화로 연결되는 그러한 미래의 엔터테인먼트 세상이 실현될 것입니다.
All the worldviews of our SM artists will come together in a large-scale virtual worldview called Metaversal Origin Story. By combining blockchain and metaverse technology, SM's contents will expand into content for truly everyone, and it will surpass time and space to bring to life this future entertainment era that will connect everyone through culture.
그리고 제가 주장하는 그리고 이제부터 정말로 중요해지는 그러한 에이지로 들어가고 있습니다. 그것은 누구나 창조 활동을 즐기는 그러한 play to create 시대가 될 것이다라고 저는 얘기하고 있습니다. 저는 미래의 음악, 영상, 디자인, 게임 등 범문화 창조 산업을 위한 새로운 비전 play to create를 제안했습니다.
We are truly standing at the cusp of a new, very important era. To meet this era, I have a new vision, which will enable everybody to enjoy creativity and creative activities in what I call the play to create era. Play to create is a vision that I have proposed that extends throughout the future of the culture and creative industry of music, video, design, and games.
여러분도 잘 아시는 요즘 보편화돼 있는 그 게임을 하면서 돈을 버는 play to earn 이것은 제 생각에는 인터넷과 메타버스의 이제 겨우 시작 단계라고 저는 생각합니다. 인류의 역사를 이렇게 보면 농경 사회를 하게 되죠. 수렵 사회에서 이제 농경 사회로 넘어가면서 여유가 생기고 또 그래서 여유가 생기다 보니까 이제 문화 생활을 즐기게 되고 안정적인 생활을 하게 되다 보니까 문화가 이렇게 자꾸 진화하는 그런 문화 세상이 필요하게 됩니다. 마치 그런 것처럼 우리가 게임을 하는 걸 즐겁게 게임하는 사람들만 이렇게 플레이한다고 그러는데 사실은 이러한 플레이하는 것처럼 즐거운 마음으로 즐겁게 창조를 하는 그런 창작 활동이 되는 P2C로 그러한 시대로 진화할 것이라고 저는 얘기하고 있습니다.
I believe that the play to earn model, playing games and earning money, which is more common in blockchain nowadays, is a model that is only the beginning stages of the web and the metaverse. Just like how human culture began and evolved as humanity shifted from hunting and gathering to establishing an agricultural society, and economic surplus allowed them to have a more stable economy and then to grow their culture. In the same way, I believe that these play activities, which are meant to be fun and enjoyable, will soon become the center of creative activities in a P2C or play to create era.
저는 CT를 확장해서 인간의 최상위 본성 그것이 바로 저는 창조성이다라고 생각하고 그것을 일깨우고 창작을 통한 경제 활동이 가능한 새로운 문화 생태계 누구나 가장 하고 싶어하는 본능은 사실은 배가 부르고 또 생활을 할 수 있고 살아갈 수 있다면 그것은 창조하고 싶은 것이다. 나는 새로운 것을 만들고 싶다. 이것이 가장 상위의 인간의 본능이다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 창조를 할 수 있게 하는 play to create, 즉 P2C 생태계를 구축하고 있습니다.
I would like to expand CT to awaken the highest human instinct of creativity and enable economic activities through creation in a new culture ecosystem and allow people to explore what everybody instinctively wants to do, create, through play to create or P2C. In other words, I would like to build a P2C ecosystem.
It sounds like a very difficult and impossible dream, but it's very easy. So I'm going to explain a little. So if you have time, so maybe you can prepare 2 days or 3 days for me. Then I can explain. P2C는 킬러 컨텐츠인 IP를 제공하게 되죠. SM이 갖고 있죠. 그러한 그 저작권 자체를 쉐어하게 될 거고요. 그 쉐어하는 것을 우리가 스마트 컨트랙을 통해서 블록체인 기반의 생태계라고 보시면 됩니다. 누구나 막 써도 거기에 다 기록이 돼 있고 다 정확하게 알 수 있기 때문에 우리는 그 저작권을 다 같이 나눠 쓰고 저작권도 다 나눠 쓸 수 있습니다. 수호의 얼굴도 마음대로 갖다가 쓸 수 있습니다. 단 마음대로 썼는데 이상하게 쓰면 알 수 있죠, 그죠? 스마트 컨트랙이라서. 그렇게 못하게만 하면 됩니다. 나쁜 것만 안 하게 하고 마음대로 그 원래의 킬러 컨텐츠인 수호의 얼굴 모습과 춤과 이러한 것들을 우리가 리크리에이션하게 만들어 줄 것입니다. 즉 수호의 킬러 컨텐츠인 수호의 IP를 리크리에이터블하게 만들어서 다시 프로스모들이 여러분들이 팬덤에 있는 팬들이 다시 리크리에이트하게 만들면서 즐기고 만드는 것 자체를 창조하면서 즐기고 또 수익을 창출할 수 있게 될 것입니다. 크리에이터의 창작 활동이 곧 경제 활동이 되는 것이죠. 그렇다면 지금 얘기하는 말이 이해가 되시죠? 크리에이터 이코노미 많이 들으셨죠? 아마 스탠포드에서는 굉장히 많이 하고 있는 얘기일 겁니다. 그러한 크리에이터 이코노미가 정말로 이렇게 해서 활성화될 것을 제가 설명만 한 것입니다. 네.
P2C is a blockchain-based ecosystem that provides SM's IPs, which are killer contents, and it is a way to share the copyrights of this content. And in this ecosystem, anyone can use the original content IPs to enjoy and create new things again through recreation, and also in this process generate revenue. And because everything is managed through smart contracts, and anyone can recreate content, anything including, say, like images of Suho's face or his dance moves. Anyone can have fun and enjoy and recreate this content, and also in that process earn revenue. And this new so-called creator economy is a place where the creative activities of creators become economic activities, and this economy will soon be activated.
P2C 그 문화 생태계를 구축하기 위해서 저희 SM에서는 뭐 실질적으로는 그 바이낸스라고 아시죠? 제1 그 코인 거래소 전 세계 1등이죠. 바이낸스와 또 SM이 같이 일을 하고 그래서 같이 뭐 NFT라든가 또 투자 그리고 공동 펀드도 만들고요. 그래서 또 메인넷 기술 컨설팅 등도 해주고 사이드 체인도 만들고 이렇게 그것을 추진 중에 있습니다. 그리고 뭐 잘 아시는 더 샌드박스 내에서는 SM 엔터테인먼트 전용 테마 공간인 SM 타운 랜드도 만들고 있습니다.
In order to establish this P2C play to create ecosystem, SM has partnered with Binance, which, as you know, is the leading cryptocurrency exchange in the world. We are working on projects such as NFTs, joint funds, and mainnet technologies. In addition, SM Entertainment is also currently creating a dedicated theme space called SM Townland in the Sandbox.
At the same time, so we are building our own metaverse. So not just in the Sandbox or not just with Binance. So we are building our own. So maybe you will enjoy to recreate the content in our metaverse soon. When? Soon. 최근에는 그 뮤직 네이션 SM 타운의 디지털 여권, 뮤직 네이션 SM 타운 메타 패스포트를 출시했습니다. 이미 저희는 2012년에 아시는 분도 계시겠지만 2012년에 전 세계 팬들이 함께 모여서 서울에서 국가 선포식을 했었죠. 네, SM 가상국가 이름은 뮤직 네이션 SM 타운이라는 이름으로 버추얼 네이션을 건립했습니다. 나라를. 네, 2012년에 뮤직 네이션 SM 타운 가상국가에 그때 저희가 패스포트를 나눠줬습니다. 그 패스포트가 10년 후인 지금 2022년에 NFT로 진화했고 지금 벌써 그때 갖고 있던 패스포트를 디지털 패스포트로 메타 패스포트로 갖고 계시는 분들이 지금 막 생겨나고 있습니다. 그 메타버스는 어떻게 보면 진정한 NFT이고 딸한테도 물려줄 수 있고 유산으로 물려줄 수 있습니다. 10년 전에 이미 메타 패스포트를 갖고 계신 분들이 있을 겁니다. 그분들은 굉장한 가치가 있다는 것을 곧 알게 될 것입니다. 10년 동안 갖고 있었으니까요. 그죠? 네. 요거 트랜슬레이션 가능한가?
Recently, SM launched Music Nation SM Town's digital passport called Music Nation SM Town Meta Passport. In 2012, we gathered in Seoul and already declared a passport for SM's virtual nation for our global fans, which has now evolved into NFTs 10 years later. Now, this Meta Passport It can be passed on to your children. It can be passed down to future generations. And the people who had these passports 10 years ago will now soon realize just how valuable these passports are.
Yes, thank you very much. SM을 넘어서 저는 뜻을 함께하는 IP 기업들, 또 글로벌 컨텐츠 플랫폼 기업, 또 다양한 국가 정부들과 함께 P2C 생태계를 만들기 위한 협력을 논의하고 있습니다.
Beyond SM, I have also been in discussions with various IP companies, global content platform companies, and various national governments who share the same goals in order to create this P2C ecosystem.
We are almost there. Okay. 음악을 넘어서 전체 문화 창조 산업의 생태계를 위해서 폭넓은 얼라이언스를 맺고자 합니다. 어렵네요. 네. 쓰긴 썼는데. 그래서 전문가가 아니라도 여러분들 기회가 없다라는 말을 많이 들으셨을 텐데 배울 기회가 없는 사람들, 또 내가 거기에 탤런트가 있는 줄 몰랐던 사람들, 그런 배울 기회가 없었고 또 나이와 경력이 상관없이 내가 이런 탤런트가 있는데 라는 것을 예를 들면 더 간단히 더 빠르게 12살의 소년 소녀가 12살입니다. 소년 소녀가 자신의 창조적인 재능이 있는가 없는가를 알 수 있게 될 거고 그 창조적인 재능을 찾아서 그 길을 갈 수 있는 SM 메타버스를 만들 것입니다. 누구나 자신의 창조성을 발견하고 창작과 함께 그때부터 노는 게 아니라 물론 플레이하지만 그 정말 즐겁게 그러한 창조를 할 수 있도록 그때부터 창작을 하면서 또 창조를 하면서 경제 활동도 할 수 있게 하려고 SM 메타버스를 만들고 있습니다.
Going beyond just music, we would like to establish a broad alliance for the P2C ecosystem that will represent the entire culture and creative industries. Even if you are not a trained professional, even if you do not have access to such opportunities, and even if you have no opportunities to even discover your talents, and regardless of age and experience, even a 12-year-old boy or girl, for example, can find their creativity and walk their own path in the SM metaverse. We want to create a place where anyone, and we mean anyone, can find their creativity and take part in creation and economic activities while having fun.
Very suspicious, right? How to do that? So even if you didn't learn, so you don't know how to compose, you don't know how to make a choreography, then you can be a choreographer and you can be a composer, at least arranger for music. Really? Yeah. So 12-year-old girl or boy cannot. They didn't learn how to compose, so K-pop music, but they will. So you are already too old. So 12-year-old, boy and the girls, if they want to do it to compose or even compose a song, then I'm going to give this song. I'm going to give this song to Suho. Then you can give it to Suho. But it should be great, right? So it should be greater than mine. Then wow, it's working. Then I'm going to retire. So hopefully. So sure, you can do it. You can compose, you can create. Can you believe it, right? So, believe it or not, I'm going to do it. So when I said, I'm going out, so how come there is no famous guy or popular singer in Korean as a Korean singer in outside the country? So why not? Because we love American singers, we love European singers, we love even so Hong Kong guys or Japanese guys. But so how come there is no singers outside country? I mean Korea. So that's why I tried. Everybody didn't believe it, but now so it's very. He's here. So, you're a Korean, right? Okay. Thank you. 킬러 컨텐츠라고 불리우는 우리의 오리지널 컨텐츠인 SM의 오리지널 IP 컨텐츠를 활용해서 프로수머가 원하는 새로운 NFT 작품으로 리크리에이트하게 도와주고요. 또 그것을 시작으로 해서 이제 진정한 창작과 진정한 창조를 할 수 있는 사람이 될 것으로, 즉 새로운 창작과 창조가 일어날 것으로 우리는 그러한 기획을 하고 있습니다.
Through SM's original IPs, which are killer contents, we will help prosumers to recreate those into new NFT artworks that they want to create. And with that as a starting point, we expect to begin a wave of further innovation and creation.
창조는 아까도 말씀드렸지만 인간의 궁극적 염원입니다. 신하고 가장 비슷하지는 그걸로 가고 싶지 않습니까? 네. 그래서 다 죽잖아요. 가려고. 그래서 창조는 인간의 궁극적 염원이며 또 누구나 play to create를 원하고 있고 모르지만 원하고 있습니다. 자기는 그런 능력이 없다고 생각하지만 있습니다. 누구나 play to create 할 수 있는 메타버스 세상이 될 것입니다.
As I've mentioned already, I believe that creativity is the ultimate and the highest human desire. And in some ways it is, I think, it is a manifestation of humans' attempts to become like God, to create something new. And we all want to play to create, and I believe that we will soon be in a metaverse where anyone can do so.
다시 한번 말씀드리면 K-팝과 한류의 궁극의 비전은 신이 인간에게 부여한 인간 고유의 그리고 최상위 본성인 창조에 기여하는 것입니다. 어렵죠? 쉬운데 사실은 우리 메타버스에 들어오면 굉장히 you feel that it's easy. Oh, it's very easy to do that. 우린 그렇게 할 거고요. 창조에 기여하는 것, 즉 누구나 그걸 하면서 즐거워야 됩니다. 그래서 창조의 즐거움을 누리는 그런 세상을 만들고 있습니다.
The ultimate vision of K-pop and Hallyu is a world that takes part in creativity, which, as I've mentioned, is a God-given capacity unique to humans and the highest manifestation of human nature. In this world, anyone can experience the joys of creation. Now, this may all sound very abstract and difficult, but as you will see very soon, it is actually quite easy, and we want everyone to have fun.
SM의 오리지널 컨텐츠는 다시 프로수머들의 새롭게 컨텐츠를 만들 수 있게 recreatable 컨텐츠로 바꾸어서 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna can I finish in 2 minutes? So she said 5 minutes. I cannot say longer than 2 minutes. It's just the last page. Is it okay? 2 minutes? Okay. So oh wow. So Stanford keeps time. If it's not, I don't want to be kicked out of Stanford. I want to attend Stanford actually. So 그 오리지널 컨텐츠를 아까도 말씀드렸듯이 그 컨텐츠는 저희 프로듀서들이 통해서 제가 만들고 또 프로듀싱에서 만드는 그 컨텐츠를 다시 recreatable 컨텐츠로 바꾼다고 말씀드렸죠. recreatable 컨텐츠가 돼서 여러분들이 그 recreatable 컨텐츠를 가지고 다시 창조하고 창작의 꿈을 펼칠 수 있도록 우선은 처음서부터 창작이 아니더라도 그래서 그렇게 쉽게 우선은 그렇게 할 수 있도록 먼저 만들 것입니다. 그렇게 해서 수많은 미래의 아티스트, 그런 창작자, 또 그런 크리에이터, 프로수머들을 위한 그러한 초석이 될 겁니다. 뭐가? 그런 킬러 컨텐츠, 우리가 갖고 있는 오리지널 컨텐츠가 바로 미래의 12살 난 소년 소녀들이 이제 미래의 크리에이터들이 될 수 있도록 훈련시키고 재미를 느끼고 하면서 나중에는 자기의 own 크리에이팅을 할 수 있도록 그러한 메타버스를 만들고 있습니다.
SM's original content will be transformed back into recreatable contents that prosumers can newly create, and this will become the foundation for many future artists, creators, and prosumers, that is, all of you, who strive to achieve their dreams of innovation and creation. And I dream of a world where 12-year-old boys or girls, they can recreate our content, discover their creativity, and through that process end up developing and creating content of their own, and most importantly, have fun.
Okay. 또한 인류의 문화와 평화에 기여하는 헤리티지로 기록되기를 바랍니다.
And I hope that this will be remembered as a heritage that is able to contribute to the culture and peace of humanity.
자, 새로운 창조의 시간이 시작됩니다. 창조 활동에 함께 여러분들이 조인하시기 바랍니다. 그러한 창조의 즐거움과 함께 SM의 휴머니티와 스피릿이 모두에게 공유되기를 바랍니다. 따라서 저희 SM의 3대 정신이 다시 중요해집니다.
Now we are standing at the beginning of a new era of creation, and I ask you to please join us as we step forward into this new era. Along with the joys of creation, I hope that the humanity and spirit of SM can be shared with everyone. The three core philosophies of SM are becoming important once again.
Be kind, be humble, be the love. Thank you.
잠깐 앉으세요.
앉을까요?
이쪽에 잠깐 앉으세요. 가운데. Okay, thank you so much. Let's give a big hands to 이수만 선생님 again.
Superpower to give the water, to control the water.
So, we are at the heart of Silicon Valley, and what you're saying today sounds very familiar. Ecosystem, right? Creativity, right? And then innovation, and then future, and so on. So I think it's a very rare opportunity for us to have him on the stage. So actually, we began a little late, so we're gonna spend maybe 15 more minutes. So I'm gonna invite Professor Kwon to make brief comments, and then he graciously agreed to take a few questions. Okay, so if you have a question, come to the microphone. But then, oh my God. But let's hear from Professor Kwon first.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be asked to give a response to Lee Soo-man's keynote address. I'll try to keep it short today. He's a visionary. Without him, there is no K-pop. Many of the things we've lauded K-pop for over the course of this conference, its global reach, the combination of visuals and music, and the strong bonds between artists and fans, are the result of his vision. He is responsible for K-pop bands, Girls' Generation, SHINee, and of course EXO, among many others that have led the way. But most impressive, he never stops thinking about the future. And not just 1 year in the future, but 10, 20, 100 years into the future. So given the bands I just mentioned, he could have rested on his laurels and kept on producing the same kind of band, the same kind of music, but he continues to innovate. Groups such as NCT, Super M, Girls on Top, and aespa offer imaginative new concepts, member formations, and music. K-pop is not stable, but continues to be reinvented again and again. So this is not the first time he has spoken at Stanford. In 2011, I believe, he gave a speech at the Graduate School of Business. And when I watched this speech on YouTube to prepare for today, I was astonished to realize that he had not only predicted, but in a way created the media culture we're living in today. Silicon Valley usually gets credit for this, but the meaning of technology always resides in how people use it. That's where the real impact happens. So in 2011, when he spoke about culture first, economy second, it seemed like a distant dream, but today we see it's a reality. Hearing him talk about this new era of SM, the metaverse, NFTs, and play to create, is like looking into the future, so I hope everyone here was listening carefully. I was really excited to hear him mention Joseon Dynasty pottery, because I was like, finally, something that was related to what I study. And it's actually a great parallel to K-pop. Joseon Dynasty pottery, they're porcelain vessels known for their subtle beauty, achieved through technological innovation. Joseon Dynasty pottery was first produced by kilns that belonged to the court, solely for imperial use. But soon regional kilns popped up over Korea and actively began producing this pottery for the middle class. In other words, while the technology originated with the imperial elite, it was soon adopted and then taken up by a broad public, who reinvented and redefined it. So in responding to his visionary speech, I would say that I'm excited to see what all of you do with the world that is being built. Because I think all of us on the stage agree the fans are what makes K-pop special. And ultimately, I believe that you have the power to make this world that's coming whatever you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we don't have much time. So I think in the first round, I'm going to take 4 questions, so 2 from each row. And once again, limit your question to 30 seconds or less. Okay, so go from this side. Just a question, okay? Yeah. Maybe we can go then this one first.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is this one on? Yeah. Hi, my name is Cyan. I'm a senior in immersive design. I'm going to be studying culture, technology, experience design next year with Kaisen in London. So I'm really interested. Thank you for talking today. Yesterday we spoke about the Korean Wave panel and the importance of connection, and today you also talked a lot about the concept of prosumer. I'm really curious to hear more about the future vision for the connection between fans and idols. Fans love stories as much as they love the content, and so what will that relationship look like? And how will the move towards blockchain for recreation of content maintain a level of personal and professional separation and protection for current idols as we build a increasingly connected and co-owned future? Sorry, that was kind of fast.
네, 저 이제 프로슈머에 대해서 좀 여쭤보고 싶은데요. 이제 팬하고 아이돌 사이의 관계가 이제 앞으로 어떻게 발전하게 될지, 그리고 이제 블록체인 언급을 많이 하셨는데 그 이제 그 아이돌 개인과 이제 사업 이런 거 관련해서 그런 거 분리를 어떻게 유지할 것인지 좀 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Okay. So ask one question. Okay.
Yesterday, Angela Cloran from CJNM mentioned that community building, or from a marketing perspective, community building within fandoms and the metaverse will be the next frontier. And as Yuswan 선생님 mentioned, SM is clearly leaning into that through the SMCU passport and aespa's origin story and beyond live concerts. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on the disparity between your main consumer group, which are young audiences who have expressed widespread concern and some resistance to the climate impact of related technologies such as NFTs and crypto. And okay, thank you.
이제 이제 공동체를 활성화시키는 노력을 SM이 많이 하고 있는데 이제 일각에서 NFT나 이제 크립토나 이런 거가 그 환경 쪽으로 좀 안 좋은 영향이 끼칠 수도 있다. 근데 이제 주된 그 소비층인 그 젊은 사람도 이런 이슈에 많이 관심을 가지고 있는데 그 문제에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시나요?
Hola Suho, hola SM Lee. So my name is Geraldine, Stanford alumni in computer science. So SM Lee, today you've spoken a lot about NFTs and Web3. You have also highlighted the importance of culture first. Do you believe there is also space within the future of K-pop to discuss important global issues that will impact culture such as climate change? Thank you.
오늘 연설에서 NFT나 웹 3.0이나 이런 기술에 대해서 언급을 많이 하셨는데 이제 앞으로 K-팝에서 기후 변화와 같은 중요한 이슈들을 이제 K-팝에서 어떻게 다룰 것인지, 다룬다면 어떤 형태로 다룰 것인지 좀 말씀해 주실 수 있으면 감사하겠습니다.
I have to create one Superman. Not you.
Okay, one more. Yeah, then.
안녕하세요.
Make it clean.
이수만 선생님. I was worried about saying 생선님 instead. Sorry. I wanted to ask you what the biggest hurdle you have found in your career is. And I also wanted to ask you to please not forget about Latin America when you're planning anything for the future, because Latin America is not just Mexico. I am Mexican, but it's not just Mexico. And to the future CEO of SM, not my words, direct quote. I wanted to ask you if you are happy with how the fans address you, like if you want to be Suo Sonsengnim, if you want to be Suo Oppa, if you like what you want to be. And I wanted to ask you if there's something that we do as fans that you don't like if you want us to know something that we should stop doing. Thank you.
일단 우선 이제 앞으로 투어나 이런 계획하실 때 그 중남미, 라틴 아메리카, 이제 멕시코뿐만이 아니라 라틴 아메리카를 조금 더 와주셨으면 하는 바람이 있고요. 그리고 일단 두 가지 질문인데요. 그 커리어에 있어서 이제 몇십 년 동안 이제 이 분야에서 일을 하셨는데 가장 큰 장애물이 무엇이라고 생각하셨는지, 그리고 지금 이제 팬들이 이제 아티스트나 SM이나 이제 선생님이 이렇게 대할 때 이건 좀 그만했으면 좋겠다, 아니면 이렇게 우리를 대하지 않았으면 좋겠다 생각하시는 것이 있으신지 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
이거 두 번째 건 저한테
요약하셔가지고 편하신 것만 말씀하시면 될 것 같아요.
So is gonna answer. What you ask.
I'll tell you first. I think it's really recreatable tool. Recreatable, yeah. So you can call me anything, Suho or Junmyeon, Oppa, but don't call me as a 선생님 because
There's only one 선생님.
Yeah, only one 선생님. Yeah. He. 선배님? 선배님? Yeah. Whatever
okay,
you want.
it's good.
Yeah. Whatever you want.
Okay, great.
Don't call him 선생님.
Yeah, don't call me.
It's only me.
Yeah. Only one 선생님.
So and in Mexico, maybe so we're gonna build the SM entertainment in every country soon. So maybe in Latin, maybe it's gonna be built in Mexico. So we're gonna build in within 2 years. So we're trying. So that's what I want to say. And stop doing what? So when they had a concert in the Latin, they had a concert in it's videotaped by KBS TV. Then they videotaped this. KBS is being run by government. It's a kind of a little restriction. Is there so many restrictions? So EXO is final, did the final. Then everybody is crazy about it. Wow! That's the last song, only one song. So stop. Then everybody encore. There was no song to sing anymore. So the encore, but so the producer came out on the stage and we're gonna re-record one more. But you have to watch out. You should stop doing that. So what? Because we videotaped when everybody throws underwear. Don't do that. Or bra. Don't throw it up to, because as you see, don't do it. Okay, so because they showed the underwear in the face. So we cannot broadcast it. So they did it again. So everybody is crazy about it. Then throw it on. So do it again. So it was a very hard time for KBS TV producers. It's a funny thing.
It's a real story.
So I'm gonna make a Superman to control the climate. Okay. So sure, why not? We can do it. Anything. What else?
Okay, so let me take one more round, then maybe it. So very quickly, just one question. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so hi, I'm Wei Yidong, and I'm a master student of University of Pennsylvania, and I'm a 10-year fan of EXO. So during this 10 years, I have a lot of questions to Mr. Lee actually. So the question is that now the sales of album is really high than before. So now today we have some GC version, this album is really cheap, but I think it's not that good inside because they are low quality, and it's like just have few pages of photos. And is that just for like to improve the sales, or there have some other like means by of this album?
Okay.
Hi, my name is Lorene. I'm a graduate student, and my question is about parasocial relationships. So I am a fan of K-pop and an XOL, and I have seen the ways in which artists appreciate fans, and in return, fans offer emotional and financial investment. Sometimes I fear that investment goes too far. So as methods of communication between artists and fans continue to intensify and become more sophisticated, how can artists and fans maintain a healthy boundary with each other? Thanks.
제가 아티스트와 팬 사이 여러 가지 관계 형성이 되고 이제 서로 이제 주고받고 하는 게 많아지고 있는데, 특히 SNS가 활성화되면서 이게 너무 경계가 없어지고 너무 과해진다는 느낌이 들 때도 있는데, 그런 이제 건강한 팬과 이제 아티스트의 관계를 어떻게 유지하면 좋을지 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Okay. Quickly.
Okay. Speak in two languages. 안녕하세요. 스탠포드 대학교 온라인 교육 교수 설계자 최지홍이라고 합니다. 우선 제 아버지께서 이수만 선생님께 많은 영향을 받으셨다고 종종 이야기를 들어서 이렇게 직접 만나뵙게
나쁜
되면서
영향 아니면 좋은 영향?
좋은 영향입니다.
둘 다.
좋은 영향, 많고 좋은 영향입니다.
Perfection is bad.
그래서 K-팝이 인기가 많아져서 한국이라는 나라가 많이 알려져서 정말 매우 반갑고 좋습니다. 옛날에 한국 사람이 이제 한국이 어딘지도 모르고 한국이라 해도 북한을 많이 알고 있어가지고 사람들이 이제 문화를 알고 이제 언어를 알게 되어서 되게 반가운데요. 혹 앞으로의 K-팝 영향에 대한 방향성의 계획이 있으신지요? 예를 들면은 이제 사람들에게 잘못 알려져 있는 한국의 음식이나 옷, 문화, 역사들에 대해서 교육까지는 아니고 뭐 다시 정정한 방향이나 아니면 뭐 앞으로 K-팝이 어떤 식으로 긍정적으로 한국 문화에 대해서 영향 어떻게 미칠지 궁금합니다. 그리고 그것에 대해서 어떤 계획이나 생각이 있으신지요? So for English.
No, it's okay. She can translate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to translate this for the audience, so K-pop has become very popular around the world. People now recognize South Korea when before they would think of North Korea first. And I was thinking if you had any thoughts or plans about the direction of influence that K-pop will have in the future. Say maybe let the world know about, say, Korean food or Korean history and whatnot. So what thoughts do you have in this regard?
Okay, so you got a final question.
Hi, my name is Jenny Lee. I had a question about the metaverse because it's my first time hearing about it actually. But this metaverse seems to actually describe a unique entity that's actually unlike its predecessors. And so should this be interpreted as an alternative avenue of consuming culture? Because the more I hear about what you've been speaking of, it actually sounds more like we're creating a whole new society. And so with that, like, how do you plan on extending that and basically sandboxing it to become consumable to the people you are catering to?
이게 메타버스에 대해서 언급을 많이 하셨는데 지금 연설에서 표현하신 내용은 이게 아이디 문화를 소비하는 한 가지의 통로로 이해가 되는데, 혹시 메타버스는 다른 세상을 하나를 완전히 만들겠다는 거잖아요. 그거랑 이제 소비하는 거랑 관계를 어떻게 생각하시는지 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
메타버스는 여러분들이 생각하는 거하고 저하고 좀 다를 수도 있을 거예요. 근데 메타버스 is a real world and another world. So another world I call it sometimes the metaverse or virtual. So virtual and real world. So I call the real world physical metaverse. So metaverse and physical metaverse will be the entire world for me. So there is no discretion. I mean, it's not too much different because so from now on, maybe 2030, so up to 2045 is a singularity year. So AI is going to be being developed very fast. So 2030, maybe AI brain like a human being, more than human being, they can develop something more than so what we are imagining now. Suppose so like maybe AI brain will find wormhole and they're gonna make the AI brain. They're gonna make a kind of the prince, the little prince as a novel. So you know, they're gonna make a kind of a little prince planet in the sky, not Elon Musk planet. It's different. So they can make it, but we spend too much time on that. But they're gonna find and they're gonna make it. So what we are imagining, or we cannot even imagine. So physical world will be same as metaverse, and so metaverse and physical metaverse is a virtual and real world, like a physical world is like no difference. It's a kind of a simulation to each other. So if you do something, it's called mirroring to like a virtual metaverse. But you know, so we don't have to spend much time on something not valuable. So like if we imagine, we can do it in the virtual. So like then we can do it mirroring into physical world. Sure. So it will develop so fast. So even you cannot imagine. So maybe what we have to do. So there's nothing. We're gonna lose our jobs. No. We can enjoy our lives. You know, so play to create. We do it at the same time. Just so culture or music or something like that. So we can enjoy our lives. You know, so more than comparing to the other past. So maybe more and more we can enjoy our lives. I hope so. The other way, maybe something dark side, sure. So and you know, so you don't have to talk about so dark side of Korean the K-pop. So in Korean saying like we say like this is a kind of a funny thing, but so narrow number. So if I do something, so do the kind of a relationship with a girl, it's a romance. But if the other guy has a romance with the other girl, if we call it like a bullion. What is it? Affair. So yeah, so bad affair or an illegal affair. So don't say us or don't say K-pop. It's a illegal something. So everybody also should understand that we have to embrace what is always is not right. Always is not wrong. So you have to find the right thing in the other human beings. So that's the humanity. So be the love. Okay? Be humble and be the love. Don't judge.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I know we have many more questions, but we have to give him a reason to come back. So he'll come back to answer other questions, right? Promise?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
If you, whatever you say.
Okay, thank you so much. Big hands.
Thank you very much. I love you all.
Okay,
so wait a minute. So there are don't go to the chair. So there are line who wanna make a question. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a present. Go over there.
Okay, 회장님 조금만 잠깐만 저기 클로징 막 하는 말 하고. Just one minute.
클로징
하시다. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. It has been great day and a half to talk about K-pop and North Korea and celebrating 20th anniversary of our program. So now we may have to call Korea program as a K program. And then I really appreciate our honored guests, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and also Lee Soo-man 선생님, and other speakers, and our donors and sponsors. It's a really honor for me. I feel really humbled to get so much support and interest. So, there are a lot of things happening with our K program, so please come to our website and hopefully you can join us again. So this will end the celebration of our Korea program this time, and hopefully I can see you all again. Thank you so much and 감사합니다.
used to keep standing in line.